Chapter 582. The sword beam streaked across the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was as if a brilliant sun had suddenly appeared in the gloomy sky, filling the air with righteousness. When the sword beam dissipated, the sky returned to its gloomy state. Other than Xia Pingan, the other two had already turned into ashes and disappeared with the wind, leaving no trace behind. The power of the Son of Heaven's sword made Xia Pingan suck in a breath of cold air. However, wasn't this power a little too strong? Just now, when Xia Pingan saw that the Son of Heaven's sword had killed the demonic man in front of him, the man's interspatial equipment had dropped some bottles, jars, and corpses. However, those bottles, jars, and corpses had also disappeared under the Son of Heaven's sword's sword light the moment they dropped, leaving nothing behind. Behind him, the goatee's interspatial equipment had also dropped some things, but those things had also disappeared in the Son of Heaven's sword's sword light. Only the realm pearls on the two of them had not been damaged in the sword light, but they had also been sent flying down like cannonballs by the impact of the sword light. Along the way, they had broken a few big trees and then disappeared into the depths of the mountain. 50 points of divine power. Xia Pingan, who was standing in the sky, looked at the divine power consumed by the Son of Heaven's sword in his secret mandala and grimaced in heartache. He had been accumulating power for this move just now. He had deliberately pretended to be weak to lure the other party into attacking and then killed them in one strike. The two guys from a Divine Tomb sect that he had just killed were both at the Sixth Sun realm. Only the goatee was a little more powerful. He was almost at the Seventh Sun realm, but he was still inferior to him. Their bodies and defensive abilities were clearly a joke in front of the power of the Son of Heaven's sword. Perhaps the two of them still had some powerful moves, but it was too late to use them. The Son of Heaven's sword was indeed not for show. With his current ability, he could summon this move at most 9 times before his divine power was exhausted and he had to take pills. Xia Pingan had already made up his mind. If this Son of Heaven's sword could not kill the two of them, then he would not need to try other spells. He would turn around and prepare to escape. And reality proved that there weren't many summoners who could withstand the Son of Heaven's sword, especially those of the same level. Xia Pingan had already seen the boundary pearls that burst out from the two of them. They were all fused with by him. At this moment, the boundary pearls had sunk deep into the ground. If he used the Earth Escape technique to retrieve the boundary pearls, the Divine Tomb sect's people might discover the secret of his Earth Escape technique if they came to investigate the scene. This was Xia Pingan's life-saving trump card. He wasn't prepared to expose it. If he used other techniques to dig up the boundary pearls, it would be a waste of time. Therefore, Xia Pingan simply ignored it. Xia Pingan landed on the riverbank below from the sky. Along with the death of those two people, the soldiers and giants they summoned also dissipated at the same time. All the corpses were pulled to the riverbank and lined up in a row. There were men, women, elders, and children in their teens among the corpses. They all had different facial features. Without exception, all of them had fatal wounds on their bodies. And from their attire, it was obvious that they were different from the summoners from the god-slaying bug world. These people were the ordinary people of Pantheon Planet. As Pantheon Planet had been devoured by the god-slaying bug world, they had also been swept here by the spatial turbulence. From the houses by the riverbank, they might have been living here in groups for a few days. Fortunately, they had not encountered any Zergs in the past few days. Unfortunately, they had encountered the two beasts from the Divine Tomb sect. This was the tragedy of the week. In the eyes of the two people from the Divine Tomb sect, they were probably just materials for someone else's spell. They were no different from ants and trees. The people from a Divine Tomb sect were interested in their corpses. Xia Pingan looked up at the huge shadow of the planet at the end of the crack in the sky. Other than these people, who knew how many more people on Pantheon Planet had been swept into the god-slaying bug world by the spatial turbulence? Who knew how many monstrous Zerg from the god-slaying bug world had already rushed to Pantheon Planet? Xia Pingan took out the soul-pacifying banner and held a short soul-pacifying ceremony for these people so that their corpses would no longer be humiliated. Then, with a wave of his hand, he summoned the sky-burning vermilion bird. The sky-burning vermilion bird spat out flames that flew over the corpses that had been lined up. The flames that could melt metal plowed the ground and directly incinerated the corpses. I hope that you can live in a peaceful world in your next life. There will be no more killing. Xiaopingan took one last look at the riverbank and sighed. In the blink of an eye, he soared into the sky and disappeared. More than half an hour after Xiaopingan left, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out in the sky. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people wearing long black robes broke through the air, as though their faces had been smeared with a layer of lime. These people were filled with murderous intent, but they were also extremely anxious. Elder Lu, young sect master, and Hall Master Wu were collecting corpses here. The one called Elder Lu had a head full of red hair, a protruding lower jaw, and 2 eyes with more white than black. His appearance was incomparably hideous, and on his chest hung a bone necklace strung with the skulls of children. Young sect master and Hall Master Wu's soul lamps have already been extinguished. The 2 of them have been killed. Elder Lu said coldly with a hoarse and dry voice. He took out something that looked like a crystal tombstone. There were still many flames dancing in it, but the soul lamps above young sect master and Hall Master Wu's names had already been extinguished. The surrounding people did not even dare breathe loudly. Young sect master had been killed right under their noses. Even if all of them left the god-slaying insect world this time, they would not be able to escape responsibility. Elder Lu bit his finger and sprinkled a drop of blood into the air. He pointed at the drop of blood with one hand and began to draw a strange talisman in the void. The drop of blood was also constantly twisting in the air and changing its shape. Elder Lu began to chant, and, as he cast the spell, countless dust and ashes visible to the naked eye gathered from all directions in the surrounding void and on the ground, forming the rough appearance of a young sect master and Hall Chief Wu in the void. Young sect master, Hall Master Wu, who was so vicious to actually annihilate all of you into ashes. Elder Lu used a hoarse voice to howl a few times as a few drops of turbid old tears squeezed out from the corner of his eyes. The Divine Tomb sect will definitely avenge all of you. Let the person who killed you suffer thousands of punishments in our death prison. Only by refining him into a living corpse can this hatred be resolved. The ashes and dust in the air changed and finally reformed into Xia Pinggan's immortal-like appearance. Then, the ashes and dust scattered in the direction that Xia Pinggan had left. Chase, Elder Lu said viciously. He had already risen into the air and chased in the direction that Xia Pinggan had left. The other members of the Divine Tomb sect followed suit. Chapter 583. Elder Lu of the Divine Tomb sect led his team to chase after Xia Pinggan. Flying in the sky, Elder Lu waved his hand, and hundreds of winged skeletal bats, flashing with black gas, appeared in the sky. These skeletal bats were more than 2 meters long and were only made of bones. The bones flashed with strange blood-colored runes. They opened their mouths and inhaled fiercely. They scattered in the air and then suddenly gathered together like arrows and chased in one direction. They were as fast as lightning. Only when the group of bats flew by did a series of sonic booms resound in the sky. Seeing those bats fly by, Elder Lu waved his hand again, and a 100-meter-long skeletal dragon with wings appeared in the sky. The skeletal dragon was majestic and full of killing intent. Its eyes were like 2 red lanterns, and a layer of blood-colored runes flashed on its bones. Elder Lu stood on the head of the skeletal dragon. The other disciples of the Divine Tomb sect all grabbed the tail of the skeletal dragon and attached themselves to its body like monkeys holding on to a banana tree. The skeletal dragon flapped its wings, and with a sonic boom, it directly chased after those skeletal bats. After killing those 2 pieces of trash, Xia Pinggan used illusion to hide his figure and continued to sit on the red-crowned crane, flying in the direction of the noble spirit mountain. However, after flying for more than 2 hours, Xia Pinggan felt a faint movement in the sky behind him. He turned his head and saw a group of black skeletal bats rapidly flying in the sky behind him. And behind those skeletal bats was a huge skeletal dragon flying behind them. On the skeletal dragon's head and behind it, there was a large group of people whose faces seemed to be smeared with lime. Just looking at those people's pale faces, Xia Pingan's heart skipped a beat. Not good, Divine Tomb Sect. When Xia Pingan killed those two pieces of trash from the Divine Tomb Sect just now, there were no other people from the Divine Tomb Sect within 100 miles. Xia Pingan thought that there were only two people from the Divine Tomb Sect. Even if there were other people from the Divine Tomb Sect in the god-slaying insect world, they wouldn't be able to catch up so quickly. He didn't expect that the people from the Divine Tomb Sect would catch up so quickly and seemed to be able to lock onto his whereabouts. Seeing that the people behind him were coming at him menacingly, Xia Pingan didn't even think about it. He immediately put away the red-crowned crane and used an illusion to hide his figure. He suddenly changed his direction and flew towards the mountain range. He didn't expect that those skeleton bats would also change their direction in the blink of an eye and fly straight towards him. The illusion didn't work. A skeletal bat suddenly accelerated and flew towards Xia Pingan. When it was about 50 meters away from Xia Pingan, the skeletal bat suddenly exploded. A shock wave formed by black gas instantly swept across the void. The illusion that Xia Pingan used to hide his figure was broken at once, revealing his figure in the air. Do you think you can escape after killing the young sect master of our Divine Tomb Sect? Elder Lu, who was standing on the head of the skeletal dragon, spat out a 3-foot-long bloody light from his eyes and locked onto Xia Pingan. The skeletal dragon spread its wings and shook its tail, suddenly accelerating at an even faster speed than before. The Divine Tomb Sect disciples, who were grabbing the skeletal dragon's tail like monkeys, were all sent flying when the skeletal dragon shook its tail. They scattered in the air and formed a huge encirclement that surrounded him from both sides. F*CK. Xia Pingan's expression changed when he saw that the other party was ready to catch a turtle in a jar. Judging from the aura of the person standing on the skeletal dragon's head, he was definitely at the Seven Sun Realm. Moreover, he was a senior expert at the Seven Sun Realm. Compared to a half-step Seven Sun Realm expert like Xia Pingan, he was more than half a realm higher. Moreover, there were other people from the Divine Tomb Sect. He had poked a hornet's nest this time. However, Xia Pingan didn't regret it. If he could do it again, he wouldn't hesitate to kill those two scumbags from before. Xia Pingan didn't retreat when he saw a large group of skeletal bats flying towards him. He waved his hand and a huge icicle was summoned. The icicle flew towards the skeletal bats. As soon as the icicle flew out, it scattered in the air and turned into hundreds of icicles. They were like raindrops as they pierced through the air and pierced towards the skeletal bats with a sharp sound. The skeletal bats screeched in the air and flapped their wings, nimbly dodging the icicles. Xia Pingan's first move was completely neutralized by the skeletal bats. Before Xia Pingan could make a second move, a flame with a black aura suddenly descended from above and enveloped Xia Pingan's head. The huge skeletal dragon had already flown above Xia Pingan's head and spewed flames at Xia Pingan. A huge and thick ice shield appeared above Xia Pingan's head. The ice shield instantly dissipated under the burning of the skeletal dragon's black flames. However, the dissipated ice shield didn't disappear. Instead, it turned into a soft water shield. The water shield vibrated like a deformed water ball and blocked the skeletal dragon's black breath again before finally dissipating with the black breath. You do have some skills to be able to switch between ice and water spells so flexibly. One spell, two spells. However, you killed the young master of the Divine Tomb Sect and are now irreconcilable enemies of the Divine Tomb Sect. Prepare to die. Elder Lu sneered in the air. With a wave of his hand, hundreds of strange golden zombies with a metallic luster and blood-red runes appeared in the air. These golden zombies had their eyes closed and their snow-white fangs protruding from their mouths. They looked particularly terrifying and could even fly. As soon as they were summoned, they pounced directly at Xia Pingan. In addition to these golden zombies, the skeletal bats also scattered and formed an encirclement in the air, surrounding Xia Pingan in an instant. In addition, there was the huge skeletal dragon above his head, an elder Lu of the Divine Tomb sect, who was already at the Seven Sun realm. In such a battle between experts, a single second of change was equivalent to thousands of fatal tribulations. Black clouds pressed down on the city and could instantly push the other party into a hopeless situation without any room to turn the situation around. The Divine Tomb sect summoners who were surrounding him from both sides also followed suit. With a wave of their hands, countless zombies flashing with golden, silver, and bronze luster filled the air and condensed into huge battle formations. They pressed down on Xia Pingan from all directions, leaving no gap for Xia Pingan. As soon as the two sides exchanged blows, Xia Pingan was heavily surrounded and seemed to have no chance of survival. Xia Pingan's expression was extremely grave. Before the golden zombies and skeletal bats could pounce on him, he waved his hand fiercely. The surrounding sky instantly darkened, and a huge black stone tablet appeared above Xia Pingan's head. It had been summoned by Xia Pingan. Xia Pingan raised the huge stone tablet with one hand. His beard and hair fluttered in the wind, making him look like a god descending to the mortal world. There were only 3 words on the black stone tablet: Falling Tears Tablet. Yanggong's Falling Tears Tablet. Chapter 584. As soon as the steel of Falling Tears appeared, the silhouette of Yang Hu, or Yanggong, appeared on the steel of Falling Tears. Yang Hu looked around with a compassionate and kind gaze, like a father looking at his young son. He bowed to the surroundings, and in an instant, the wind and clouds changed color, and the situation was reversed. The golden zombies that were charging over stopped in their tracks. Tears of blood flowed out of their eyes, and their originally ferocious faces suddenly became sorrowful. The golden zombies howled loudly and quickly retreated, unwilling to fight anymore. The skeleton bats did the same. They were originally surrounding Xia Pingan, but as soon as Yanggong appeared, the skeleton bats also scattered, no longer surrounding Xia Pingan, and retreated. The bone dragon that was about to spit out another breath suddenly let out a mournful cry. It flapped its wings and suddenly soared into the sky. The pitch-black flame was like a spear that pierced the sky, and it seemed to be paying tribute to Yanggong. Elder Lu of the Divine Tomb sect, who was originally standing on the bone dragon's head, was caught off guard. Along with the bone dragon that soared into the sky, he instantly soared 1,000 meters into the air and pulled away from Xia Pingan. Steel of Falling Tears. Elder Lu, who was suddenly unable to control himself, was both shocked and angry. Apart from Xia Pingan, no one else could read the small characters on the steel of Falling Tears boundary pearl. However, once the spell was used, it would make all summoned creatures in battle cry and retreat in grief. Therefore, some people called it the steel of Falling Tears, battle steel, golden thunder steel, and so on. It could be considered a lucky hit. The golden, silver, and bronze zombies summoned by the disciples of the Divine Tomb sect, which formed an airtight formation, suddenly collapsed. All the zombies cried and retreated in grief. It was complete chaos, and they no longer pressed forward. This caused the disciples of the Divine Tomb sect to panic, and they all hurriedly recalled the zombies they summoned. Yanggong's virtue is praised by heaven and earth, and revered by ghosts and gods. Once the steel of Falling Tears appeared, the army of 10,000 would flee. To be honest, before Xia Pingan summoned the Falling Tears tablet, his heart was pounding like a drum. This was only his first plan to deal with the current situation. Because the secret technique used by the Divine Tomb sect summoners was obviously different from the ones that could be summoned by fusing with the realm beads, Xia Pingan wasn't sure if the Falling Tears tablet would work on the zombies and skeletons summoned by the Divine Tomb sect's secret technique. But the result made Xia Pingan overjoyed. The steel of Falling Tears was indeed powerful. As soon as it appeared, the ultimate killing array of the Divine Tomb sect disappeared instantly, and everyone was thrown off their feet. The tablet of falling tears had rendered all of the summoning spells of the divine tomb sect useless. They had lost all of their advantages. Since they couldn't summon battle puppets, all the summoners could only fight with spells. After discovering that Xia Pingon had summoned the falling tears tablet, Elder Lu waved his hand. In the blink of an eye, the black fog behind him rolled and formed a portal. The bone dragons, skeleton bats, and golden zombies that he had summoned were all recalled by him. Then, Elder Lu descended from the sky with a murderous look on his face. With a wave of his hand, a fire dragon blasted towards Xia Pingon. Facing the fire dragon that was coming down on him, Xia Pingon waved his hand, and a dozen huge icicles flew out of his hand like giant spears used to slay dragons. He didn't retreat at all and directly pierced the head and body of the fire dragon. Boom! When ice and fire met, it was as if thunder had struck in the sky. With a rumble, the icicles shot by Xia Pingon were all shattered into snowflakes and fell from the sky. The fire dragon also scattered into countless fire rain and fell from the sky bit by bit. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, ice and fire fell at the same time. It was a spectacular sight. However, the fluttering snowflakes and fiery rain in the air once again fused and disappeared at the same time. All of a sudden, a huge cloud of fog appeared in the sky and expanded in an instant. It was like a huge cloud of cotton candy had appeared in the sky, causing the surrounding sky to become misty and the visibility to decrease. Elder Lu's expression changed once again, because when the snow and fire met in the air, they turned into mist. This change was also beyond his expectations. To be able to control a spell to such an extent, this was not just powerful, but terrifying. This meant that the other party had completely calculated every change in the collision of the two spells, and was able to use this change to create a battlefield situation that was advantageous to him. And the one who had caused all of this was undoubtedly Xia Pingon. And all this was not deliberately pursued by Xia Pingon. Xia Pingon realized that as his soul power increased, especially after he became a high-ranking spirit shepherd, his control of spells and the changes in the battlefield and battle had also increased. It had even reached a realm that he didn't dare to imagine before. Now, to him, he could play countless tricks with a simple water-type spell. This was a pleasant surprise. Be careful, don't let him escape. Elder Lu saw the fog in the sky and immediately knew what Xia Pingon was planning. He exclaimed. Xia Pingon smiled mysteriously at Elder Lu, but his figure had already disappeared into the fog in an instant. In the face of such a large area of fog that suddenly appeared in the sky, ordinary spells would not be able to disperse it in a short time, unless one could summon a gale. But to these people of the Divine Tomb sect, no one had mastered a summoning spell related to the weather, not even Elder Lu. The disciples of the Divine Tomb sect hurriedly summoned the various zombies and summoned creatures they had summoned into the secret mandala, then rushed into the fog in the sky. The fog shrouded the sky within a radius of several kilometers. Elder Lu rushed into the fog, but there was no trace of Xia Pingon. Elder Lu roared and waved his hand. A flame flew out from his hand and cleared a large area of the fog in the space within 100 meters. But just as the fog was cleared, the surrounding fog suddenly surged over and filled the space. Looking around, one could only see within 100 to 200 meters. This kind of pure physical invisibility and illusion made Elder Lu unable to lock onto Xia Pingon's figure for a moment. Elder Lu had no choice but to rush into the fog. Half a minute later, Xia Pingon's figure suddenly emerged from the fog behind a Divine Tomb sect disciple. Xia Pingon had a long sword in his hand, and before that Divine Tomb sect disciple could react, the long sword in his hand had already slashed out. That Divine Tomb sect disciple's defensive spells were passively activated, and a water shield and an ice shield suddenly appeared. But the water shield and ice shield instantly collapsed under the sharp edge of the longsword, as if they were made of paper. Xia Pingon's longsword directly cut through that Divine Tomb sect disciple's neck, killing him in one strike. That Divine Tomb sect disciple only had time to let out a panic scream before his corpse fell from the sky. That person is here. A nearby divine tomb sect disciple shouted, and a huge fireball blasted toward Xiaopingan. The fireball's light illuminated the fog and also attracted the attention of the surrounding divine tomb sect disciples. Xiaopingan didn't continue to tangle with them. Before the fireball could reach him, he had already rushed out of the fog and rushed towards the ground. Don't let him escape. A large group of divine tomb sect disciples chased after Xiaopingan's figure. Elder Lu also passed through the fog and chased after Xiaopingan's figure. Xiaopingan's figure was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared behind a mountain ridge. The divine tomb sect disciples were like a pack of wild wolves, and all of them chased after him. A few minutes later, following Elder Lu's furious roar, several hundred pitch-black arrows, as well as countless fireballs and icicles thrown by the surrounding divine tomb sect disciples, shot toward Xiaopingan like raindrops, completely sealing the space in front and behind Xiaopingan. After the fleeing Xiaopingan's figure twisted a few times in the air, an arrow pierced through his chest. Xiaopingan's figure immediately dissipated and turned into an eagle owl flapping its wings. The eagle owl was then hit by a fireball and instantly disappeared without a trace. Where was there anyone? There was no one at all. Not good. The eagle owl an illusion. We've been fooled. Elder Lu's expression changed, and his ashen-like face became as dark as the bottom of a pot. Chapter 585. More than 10 days later, a thin man with an unlikable horse-like face and a pair of triangular eyes, wearing a black magician's robe, leisurely flew over from afar. He finally reached the boundary of the Great Spirit Mountain in the god-slaying insect realm. The Noble Spirit Mountain was extremely majestic. It was a huge mountain range that was tens of thousands of meters high and stretched for thousands of kilometers straight into the clouds. Tens of thousands of mountains surrounded the Noble Spirit Mountain, surrounding and protecting it in the midst of the mountains. It had an aura of supremacy. Several giant turtles carrying cities floated in the sky and gathered around the Noble Spirit Mountain. 4 waterfalls like white water dragons flowed down from the mountain range that was tens of thousands of meters high in the east, south, west, and north of the Noble Spirit Mountain. They passed through the clouds and flowed into a surging river in the surroundings. On the ground, a huge cluster of cities was built around the mountain and surrounded the Noble Spirit Mountain. It was almost tens of thousands of square kilometers long. Countless summoners could be seen flying around on the ground and in the sky. It was extremely lively. If it weren't for the huge space crack that looked like a sky-splitting crack on the top of the Noble Spirit Mountain and the gloomy dark red oppressive aura that filled the sky, this place simply didn't look like the human world. It had the aura of an immortal realm. Under the huge crack in the sky, the Noble Spirit Mountain in front of them was like a sharp sword that split the heavenly secrets, appearing even more piercingly cold and sharp. What a big city! The horse-faced summoner flew over and looked at the lively scene of the Noble Spirit Mountain in front of him. He couldn't help but be moved and exclaim in admiration. Seeing the horse-faced man fly over from afar, 3 disciples of the Divine Tomb sect who were wandering in the surrounding airspace immediately flew toward the horse-faced man. One of them directly took out a mirror in his hand and shone it at the horse-faced man from afar. Seeing someone holding a mirror and shining it at him, the horse-faced man frowned. His triangular eyes flashed fiercely, and he glared at them without fear. He snorted coldly. "Who are you? How dare you shine something at me?" When the long-faced man was reflected in the mirror, he still looked the same. Beside him, a disciple of the Divine Tomb sect was holding a scroll in his hand. The scroll was the same immortal-like summoner that Xiaopingan had transformed into a few days ago. The disciples of the Divine Tomb sect looked at it and found that the person in the mirror was different from the one in the painting. Therefore, they relaxed a little. "Fellow Taoist, please don't blame us. We're from the Divine Tomb sect of the Noble Spirit Mountain. There's an extremely vicious person who's been killing and robbing people outside. In order to maintain the peace of the Noble Spirit Mountain, We're trying to apprehend this criminal. If this fellow Taoist sees the criminal on the portrait in my hand or has any clues about this criminal, please inform our Divine Tomb sect. Once it's verified, our Divine Tomb sect will definitely reward you handsomely. Oh, what's the reward? The horse-faced man licked his lips and revealed a greedy look. The trace of unhappiness just now seemed to have disappeared. Realm beads, money, and even divine springs. You can choose any of them, a disciple of the Divine Tomb sect said. When they saw someone flying over from afar, 3 disciples of the Divine Tomb sect immediately flew towards that person. The horse-faced man narrowed his eyes as he watched the 3 disciples of the Divine Tomb sect fly away. Fortunately, he was prepared. The Divine Tomb sect had indeed made preparations in the noble Spirit Mountain. This horse-faced man was Xia Pingan. After fighting with Elder Lu and the others, Xia Pingan had summoned the eagle owl and used illusions to lure the Divine Tomb sect disciples away while he found a place to hide with the one-leaf vision technique. After a series of exchanges, Elder Lu had searched for him in the vicinity for an entire day and found no trace of him. Thus, he had no choice but to leave with the Divine Tomb sect disciples. Xia Pingan had changed his appearance 2 days later. He changed his direction and took a detour before arriving at the noble Spirit Mountain today. As it turned out, Xia Pingan's act of changing his appearance was very necessary and effective. The mirror in the hands of the Divine Tomb sect disciple just now was a magic artifact similar to the reflection mirror that could reveal a person's true appearance. If Xia Pingan hadn't mastered the transformation mystic technique, he would have been discovered just now. After the transformation, it was as if he had become a completely different person. Xia Pingan hadn't been in contact with anyone in the past few days. Based on the performance of the Divine Tomb sect disciples just now, Xia Pingan discovered that the Divine Tomb sect's lair seemed to be on the noble Spirit Mountain. He had bumped into the Divine Tomb sect's lair this time. Xia Pingan continued to fly towards the noble Spirit Mountain. The city cluster of the noble Spirit Mountain gradually revealed itself in front of Xia Pingan's eyes. Looking at the summoners flying in the sky, Xia Pingan was a little shocked. What a big city! The city scale of the noble Spirit Mountain was definitely larger than that of Shangjing City. It was the largest city Xia Pingan had ever seen. What was more terrifying was that the people in this city seemed to be summoners of at least the 6 Sun realm. The summoners here came from all over the Yuanxia world. The number of summoners gathered in the Undead Sea was on a completely different level compared to this place. As usual, Xia Pingan found a lively restaurant to have a meal. While eating, he listened to the conversations of the other summoners in the restaurant to gather information. Sure enough, the news of the Divine Tomb sect's young sect master's death had spread throughout the entire noble Spirit Mountain. There were already people talking about it in the restaurants. The Divine Tomb sect would reward the summoner who killed their young sect master handsomely. Anyone who could provide accurate information would be rewarded with 10 million gold coins, or a 7 Sun Realm, or 8 Sun Realm Divine Spring. The reward was a 7 Sun Realm Divine Spring? After hearing this news, Xia Pingan almost wanted to tie himself up and send himself to the Divine Tomb sect. He was looking for a Divine Spring right now. However, the Divine Tomb sect still didn't know who the summoner who killed their young sect master was or what his name was. They only had a portrait and knew that the summoner could summon the Falling Tears tablet. There were very few summoners who could summon the Falling Tears tablet. It was even rarer than the Sage Master. This was the only clue the Divine Tomb sect had. Xia Pingan was secretly vigilant. Because he had never used the Falling Tears tablet in front of others before, the Divine Tomb sect wouldn't suspect him. However, if the Divine Tomb sect didn't die out in the future, he might be suspected if he used the Falling Tears tablet again. Therefore, he couldn't use the Falling Tears tablet unless he had no other choice. Other than the news of the Divine Tomb sect's young sect master's death, Xia Pingan also heard a lot of other news. There were all kinds of rumors, such as the opening of the Demon Gate and the reappearance of the ancient races, the preparation of the Noble Spirit Mountain's major powers to establish the Noble Spirit Alliance in the Noble Spirit Mountain to deal with the current situation, the increasing unrest in the Yuanxio world outside the god-slaying insect world. And some sage master appeared somewhere and learned some secret enlightenment technique. Have you heard? The 10,000 God sect is currently recruiting men of sacrifice to head to the 10,000 God star. As long as they are brave enough to not fear death and meet the requirements of the 10,000 God sect, the 10,000 God sect will directly reward them with the divine spring. A voice suddenly appeared in Xia Pinggan's ears, causing him to be shocked. P.S. I'm a little jaded. Why don't you save more before reading? Tiger covers face. Chapter 586. Aren't we courting death if we go to the Myriad God Planet now? The Myriad God Planet has already been swallowed by the god-slaying bug world and is destined to be dissolved. It's only a matter of time. Now, other than the bug race, the ancient remnant race is also wreaking havoc on the Myriad God Planet. How many people would go there? If it wasn't dangerous, the Myriad God sect wouldn't have offered such a high price. A nether passage and energy-shaping realm divine spring, and they're giving it away just like that. That's true. It's getting harder and harder to find a nether passage and energy-shaping realm divine spring in the god-slaying bug world. Last year, someone even offered a nether passage realm divine spring at the Noble Spirit Mountains auction. This year, nether passage realm divine spring is nowhere to be seen. I plan to leave the god-slaying bug world in a few days and try my luck in other mystic realms. When Xia Pinggan heard this, he couldn't help but stand up and walk toward the place where the conversation was taking place. It was a table of guests who had just sat down in the restaurant. There were two summoners, one fat and one thin. Judging from their auras, they were both at the Sixth Sun realm. The fat summoner had a small mustache and looked somewhat friendly. The thin summoner had bright eyes and was obviously a shrewd and powerful character. Seeing Xia Pinggan walk over, the two summoners who were chatting exchanged glances and became slightly wary. They immediately stopped talking. Xia Pinggan's horse-like face and triangular eyes made him look like someone who was not to be trifled with. Xia Pinggan walked to their table and smiled at them. He revealed what he thought was an amiable smile and turned to the waiter who had been summoned. "Waiter, the bill for these two brothers' table is on me." The summoner with the mustache sized up Xia Pinggan and narrowed his eyes as he asked, "Ahem, what do you mean, brother? We don't seem to know you before." This was a restaurant, a public place. Seeing that Xia Pinggan was polite and that his aura was only at the Sixth Sun realm, the two summoners weren't too nervous. Let me introduce myself first. My surname is Mei, and my name is Mei Zheng. I've just arrived at the god-slaying insect realm, and I'm looking for some opportunities to advance to the Nether Passage realm. Just now, I heard that the two of you had similar experiences as me, and I can empathize with you. So I took the liberty to come over and chat with you and exchange information. I hope you don't mind. Today, all your expenses in this restaurant will be paid by me. Mei Zheng just didn't have such a person. Now, Xia Pinggan was naming his incarnation more and more casually. "Ha ha ha, you're too polite, brother. If you don't mind, please take a seat. Let's eat and chat at the same time. It's fate." The thinner summoner laughed and invited Xia Pinggan to sit down. He introduced himself, "I'm Guoshi." Then he pointed at the fatter summoner and said, "This is Zhou Zixin, brother Zhou. We met in the wild a few days ago and then came to this Noble Spirit Mountain to look for opportunities." Xia Pinggan asked the waiter to serve some dishes and bowls. Then he told them about what he had seen and heard in the Undying Sea. Then he started to chat with the two while eating. Guoshi and Zhou Zixin came from Gold Mountain. Gold Mountain was another human gathering area 70,000 to 80,000 kilometers away from here. However, it wasn't as lively as this place. There were many medicinal herbs in Gold Mountain, and it was said that there were many natural treasures unique to the god-slaying bug world. Therefore, like the Undying Sea, it attracted many summoners. The two hadn't been to the Undying Sea, so they were very interested in the situation there. As Xia Pinggan spoke, The two listened with great interest. The information that Guo Shi and Zhou Zixin shared was not considered a secret in the god-slaying bug world. It was just that the two of them did not hide anything from him. The three of them wanted to find the Nether Passage realm Holy Spring. However, it wasn't so easy to get it. The one who said that he was going to leave the god-slaying bug world and try his luck in other secret realms was Guo Shi. To be honest, I've been to the immortal city of the myriad gods sect in the Undying Sea. However, the recruitment of disciples there is very strict. They need a lot of insect crystals to join the sect. I haven't collected enough insect crystals yet, so I'm going to try my luck here. Xiao Pingon shook his head and sighed. I heard Brother Zhou say that the myriad gods sect is recruiting men of sacrifice. If someone is willing to go to the myriad gods planet, he can get the Nether Passage realm Holy Spring. Why don't you two give it a try? Brother May, do you know that the myriad gods sect has another name? It's called the Myriad Death Sect. The Myriad Death Sect lives up to its name. Zhou Zixin picked up a piece of fragrant venison in his mouth and said while shaking his head, the situation on the Myriad Gods planet is extremely dangerous. Whoever goes there will have a slim chance of survival. That's why the Myriad Gods sect is so generous. Otherwise, do you think they would be so generous as to offer the Nether Passage realm Holy Spring? What exactly is the danger? The Zergs that were in the Abyss Worm nest previously have a spatial passageway to the Myriad Gods planet. There's no difference between entering the Myriad Gods planet and the Abyss Worm nest. This is only one of the reasons. Guo Shi raised a finger and explained to Xiao Pingon. Secondly, other than the Zergs, the primordial remnant race have entered the Myriad Gods planet in large numbers. The primordial remnant race is more dangerous than the Abyss Worm tribe. Oh, what's the primordial remnant race? Xiao Pingon asked. Brother May, have you never heard of them before? Forgive my ignorance, but I've never heard of them before. I was just about to ask the two of you. Zhou Zixin shook his head and said, Brother May, you don't have to be so polite. It's normal that Brother May hasn't heard of them, because they only exist in the god-slaying insect realm. Moreover, they are rarely seen and haven't appeared for many years. We only learned about them a few days ago when we heard people talk about them. There's a legend that these so-called Archean races are actually one of the most ancient insect tribes in the god-slaying insect realm. However, these insect tribes are different from ordinary insect tribes. These Archean races like to occupy the bodies of summoners the most. After merging with summoners, they take over the summoners' bodies and turn them into summoners. Therefore, these Archean races look like humans like summoners. Legend has it that the gods who fell in the god-slaying insect realm were exterminated by the Archean races. Summoners entering the Myriad Gods planet now is equivalent to giving meat to the primordial remnant race. The primordial remnant race can't wait for us to enter. Are the primordial remnant race very difficult to deal with? Xiao Pingon asked. Of course. If the primordial remnant race were only summoners or Zergs, they wouldn't be difficult to deal with. At worst, they would be the same as us. However, they can use our various spells and fuse with realm pearls. Furthermore, they are extremely powerful. At the same time, they possess some strange abilities of the Zergs. Their close combat strength is also off the charts. The so-called primordial remnant race is a primordial remnant race. Their luck isn't something that can be saved by luck. Let's put it this way. A reflection realm primordial remnant race is definitely more difficult to deal with than a few reflection realm summoners or reflection realm Zergs combined. I'd rather deal with a few reflection realm Zergs or reflection realm summoners than a reflection realm primordial remnant race. I heard that those darn things can become stronger by devouring summoners. Guo Shi said with some lingering fear. Why would the primordial remnant race appear on Pantheon Planet? Because of spatial devouring. Only when spatial devouring occurs will the demonic gate of the primordial remnant race have a chance to open. The primordial remnant race loves to possess and devour the bodies of humans. The humans on Pantheon Planet are all targets for the primordial remnant race to possess and devour. Xiao Pingon nodded with a solemn expression. I understand. Thank you for your advice. Since Pantheon Planet is already so dangerous, why would the 10,000 Gods sect be willing to pay such a huge price to invite Deathsworn to Pantheon Planet? The core members of the 10,000 Gods sect are all spacewalkers from Pantheon Planet. Since their home planet is in danger, the 10,000 Gods sect naturally wants to save more people. As long as more Deathsworn enter Pantheon Planet, they will be able to fend off the Zergs and primordial remnant race to a certain extent. The humans on Pantheon Planet will have a greater chance of escaping. I heard that the 10,000 Gods sect has already prepared a few secret settlements in the god-slaying bug world. They are currently sending out disciples to search for and take in the people who have escaped from Pantheon Planet. There are also demigod experts of the 10,000 Gods sect. Their divine kingdoms can also accommodate many humans on Pantheon Planet. Gwa, she stroked his chin. Many people say that the 10,000 Gods sect is actually delaying the destruction of Pantheon Planet. They want to wait for their demigod experts to ascend to godhood. Once the 10,000 Gods sect can ascend to godhood, their god will be able to take the entire Pantheon Planet into his divine kingdom, allowing the civilization and humans on Pantheon Planet to continue. After chatting with the two, Xiaopingon finally understood what was going on. The 10,000 Gods sect was also a major faction in Noble Spirit Mountain. They were recruiting Deathsworn in Noble Spirit Mountain. After the meal, Xiaopingon treated them to a meal. The three of them parted amicably at the restaurant. Guoshi and Zhou Zixin both wanted to try their luck at Noble Spirit Mountain and see if they could obtain the Divine Spring. If they could not, they might have to leave the god-slaying bug world. After leaving the restaurant, Xiaopingon did not go to the 10,000 Gods sect for the time being. Instead, he found a place to stay in Noble Spirit Mountain. He wanted to see if there were any other places besides the 10,000 Gods sect that could obtain the Divine Spring. Other than the Divine Tomb sect and the 10,000 Gods sect, there were also organizations like the Flying Heaven Tower, the Dragon King sect, and the Noble Spirit Alliance in Noble Spirit Mountain. These organizations were also very powerful, with at least 9 Sun Realm experts presiding over them. After staying for a few days, Xiaopingon discovered that the number of summoners who wanted to come to Noble Spirit Mountain to obtain the Divine Spring was as numerous as the number of carps crossing the river. The major factions and sects in Noble Spirit Mountain, such as the Divine Tomb sect, could indeed obtain the Divine Spring. However, the first condition to obtain the Divine Spring from these sects was to join these sections. At the same time, one had to make a huge contribution to the sect and undergo a long period of inspection before they could obtain the Divine Spring. For a summoner, it was normal to take a few decades to advance from the 6 Sun Realm to the 7 Sun Realm. Those who could advance in a few years were like riding on a rocket. As for money, Xiaopingon had a lot of it. However, at this time, high-grade Divine Springs were only occasionally seen in the auction house. There were too few opportunities to buy them with money. Not everyone had the opportunity to encounter them. After staying in Noble Spirit Mountain for a while, Xiaopingon discovered that the fastest way to obtain the Divine Spring from the 7 Sun Realm and advance to the 7 Sun Realm was actually at the 10,000 Gods sect. Chapter 587. A few days later, the sky was slightly bright. Grand Spirit Mountain's Wan Shun sect branch. The 10,000 Deities sect was also one of the major powers in the Noble Spirit Mountain. The 10,000 Deities sect had a branch in the Noble Spirit Mountain. This branch was located on a towering main peak that was thousands of meters high in the east of the Noble Spirit Mountain. The 10,000 Deities sect's influence in the Noble Spirit Mountain was even greater than in the Immortal City. At the foot of the mountain below the branch, the continuous city and buildings were the property of the 10,000 Deities sect. The scale of this branch was at least twice that of the Immortal City. Xiaopingon flew down from the sky and landed outside the mountain gate of Wan Shun sect branch. There were already 40 to 50 summoners gathered here. There were both men and women, and they all had different appearances. Judging from their auras, they were all 6 Sun Realm summoners. Furthermore, their auras were very solid. There were no newcomers who had just advanced to the sixth sun realm. As soon as Xia Pingan landed, a group of people looked at him. Xia Pingan looked at them coldly, and they consciously retracted their gazes. All of them felt that this horse-faced, triangular-eyed newcomer was not to be trifled with. Another one has come. There are indeed many people who are not afraid of death. Soft discussions could be heard from the crowd. Instead of being stuck in the sixth sun realm forever, why not take the risk? Everyone is here for the divine spring. Nonsense if the divine spring was not rare. Who would come here to risk their lives? Although Wanshun planet was dangerous, there were still people who were willing to take the risk for the divine spring. The summoners who dared to come here were not ordinary people. Xia Pingan stood in the crowd and waited quietly. There were people constantly flying over and landing in the crowd, joining the waiting group. Looking at Wanshun Sect's Grand Spirit Mountain branch in front of him, Xia Pingan was filled with emotions. His fate with Wanshun Sect was really deep. After leaving the Immortal Sea and coming to Grand Spirit Mountain, he actually got involved with Wanshun Sect again. There were too many people who wanted to obtain the divine spring of the 10,000 Deities sect. Therefore, no matter how powerful the Blood Demon Church was, it could not stop others from joining the 10,000 Deities sect or working for the 10,000 Deities sect. From time to time, red-clothed deacons, black-robed disciples, and white-robed disciples of the 10,000 Deities sect could be seen flying in the sky. The white-robed disciples were at the sixth sun realm, while the black-robed disciples were at the seventh sun realm. The red-robed disciples were at the top of the seventh sun realm, and they were deacons of the 10,000 Deities sect. After about half an hour, a faint dark red light appeared in the east of the gloomy sky. It was daybreak. A red-robed deacon with a head full of white hair and eyebrows as black as knives walked out of the mountain gate at this moment. He glanced at everyone waiting outside and nodded. He went straight to the point. Wanshun Sect is recruiting men of sacrifice to go to Wanshun planet. Everyone should be here for this. I won't beat around the bush. Everyone, follow me in. Those who pass the test will be recruited and receive a seven sun realm divine spring. After speaking, the red-robed deacon turned and walked into the mountain gate. Everyone outside the mountain gate followed him in one by one. After entering the mountain gate and passing through a forest, a huge drill ground appeared in front of everyone's eyes. On the drill ground was a terrifyingly heavy and rusty iron lion. The iron lion was more than 7 meters tall, more than 10 meters long, and more than 3 meters wide. No one knew what was placed there for. The red-robed deacon led everyone to the iron gate and pointed at the rusty iron lion. This iron lion weighs 150,000 kilograms. For the first test, those who can lift this iron lion above their heads without using any techniques will pass. Xia Pingan looked at the iron lion. 150,000 kilograms meant that it weighed 85 tons. For a sixth sun realm summoner, it was not difficult to summon a giant to lift it. However, it was not easy to lift it with one's physical strength. This weight was equivalent to lifting a heavy train carriage. I'll go first. A summoner with a body as strong as a bull and messy hair walked forward. He rolled up his sleeves and roared. He grabbed the huge iron lion with both hands and lifted it above his head. He held it there for 3 seconds. When that person used all his strength to lift the huge iron lion above his head, his feet were directly pressed half a foot into the ground. That person put down the iron lion. The ground rumbled, and everyone's feet trembled slightly. The red-robed deacon nodded. Pass! The summoner who was standing in the pit grinned. He pulled his legs out of the pit and stood to the side. Another summoner with a cold face walked forward and lifted the iron lion with both hands. After a few seconds, he placed it heavily on the ground. Pass! Next! The red-robed deacon watched calmly from the side. More and more people went up to lift the iron lion. On the ground beside the iron lion, more and more pits were left. Some people could lift the iron lion, but others found it extremely difficult. 2 summoners went up to try, but even after using all their strength, they could only barely lift the iron lion with flushed faces. They were unable to lift the iron lion above their heads, so they could only retreat dejectedly. A female summoner who was dressed in colorful clothes and had her hair tied in small braids stepped forward. She tried, but was unable to lift it. She could only shake it, causing the iron lion to move a few steps on the ground. The woman gritted her teeth and looked at the red-robed deacon with an unconvinced expression. She argued, "Why do we have to hold such a test? We are summoners. When we fight, we could just use spells to summon. Why do we have to test our physical strength? If your godly power is exhausted, or you encounter an enemy in an environment where you cannot use your godly power, what will you do? Will you let the enemy wait for you to recover slowly? At that time, physical strength is the key to combat strength," the red-robed deacon said calmly. "Those who can lift the Iron Lion have a higher chance of survival when they reach Myriad God Planet. Those who cannot lift it have a weak physique and will not be able to face a complex environment. The chances of survival, they're also not high. They will only be food for the primordial races and insectoids. Although our Myriad God sect is recruiting sacrificial warriors, we do not wish to send people to their deaths for no reason." The female summoner opened her mouth, but could not say anything in the end. She retreated. After the female summoner left, another white-haired old man with a resolute face went forward. He attempted to lift the Iron Lion. The old man's arms and legs were thin. He gritted his teeth and lifted the Iron Lion with great difficulty. His body trembled and his bones creaked. The way he lifted the Iron Lion made Xia Pingon shudder in fear. Xia Pingon saw the old man's blood vessels bulging. His face was ferocious and his eyes were bloodshot. Just as he lifted the Iron Lion above his neck with his trembling hands, drops of blood seeped out from under his skin. "Not good, Kacha." The old man's legs, which were pressed into the pit, emitted a terrifying crisp sound. They were instantly broken. A mouthful of black blood spewed out of the old man's tightly shut mouth. Blood flowed out of the old man's nose, eyes, and ears as he fell backward. The huge Iron Lion slammed heavily into the old man's body. The old man heavily fell to the ground. Both of his calves were broken, and he was already on the ground. Both of his legs were still in the pit, and even his bones were exposed. Only a layer of skin was left. It was incomparably miserable. However, the huge Iron Lion didn't hit the old man. Instead, it was firmly held in one hand by a 10-meter-tall giant summoned by the red-robed deacon. "I can do it. Cough, cough. I can lift it up. Give me another chance. I want the divine spring. I want the divine spring of the Seven Suns realm. I've been working for the divine spring of the Seven Suns realm for more than 50 years. This is my last chance. I can't wait any longer." The old man spat out blood as tears streamed down his face. He wailed on the ground, struggling to get up. All the summoners fell silent. They felt a pang in their hearts. The old man's despair, wailing, and struggling were a reflection of everyone else. If they had other means, no one would be willing to gamble with their lives. Not every carp can become a carp, nor does every summoner have the chance to advance to the Nether Passage realm. You may leave. The God-slaying insect world is not suitable for you, nor is the Myriad God Planet suitable for you. I sympathize with you, but the Myriad God Sect's Nether Passage realm divine spring is very precious. Every drop can only be used where it should be used. It cannot be used for charity. The red-robed deacon waved his hand as two white-robed disciples appeared. They picked up the wailing old man on the ground and sent him away coldly. Next, Xia Pingon calmly walked forward and arrived in front of the Iron Lion. He grabbed the Iron Lion with one hand and gently lifted it. The 150,000-kilogram Iron Lion was lifted above his head. Xia Pingon's feet were still firmly planted on the ground. His feet did not sink into the ground. The surrounding people instantly fell silent. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. The few summoners who had just lifted the Iron Lion were even more dumbfounded. Some even swallowed their saliva and rubbed their eyes. No one knew better than them what this meant. The red-robed deacon looked at Xia Pingon's feet and narrowed his eyes. He took a deep breath, nodded, and said, "Not bad, Xiao Pingon calmly put down the iron lion as if he was putting down a feather. Then he calmly stood to the side. "What's your name?" The red-robed deacon asked for the first time. "Mei Zhang. You also came for the Seven-Sun Realm Divine Spring?" "Yes." The red-robed deacon nodded. With a wave of his hand, a white-robed disciple of Wan Shun sect appeared beside him. The red-robed deacon pointed at Xiao Pingon and said, "Take him directly to Wan Shun Hall to see Steward Mu." Under the guidance of the white-robed disciple of Wan Shun sect, Xiao Pingon directly left the drill ground under the envious gazes of the crowd. 10 minutes later, the white-robed disciple of Wan Shun's sect brought Xiao Pingon to a splendid palace. He asked Xiao Pingon to wait outside the palace while he went in to report. 1 minute later, the white-robed disciple of Wan Shun's sect came out and led Xiao Pingon into the palace to see Steward Mu. Chapter 588. Steward Mu was not a man, but a woman. To be precise, she was an old granny with a dignified aura. Steward Mu wore a long blue dress and sat behind a long table. She wore a tall purple gold crown on her silver hair. Every strand of her silver hair was neatly coiled on her head. Her pair of red phoenix eyes were exceptionally sharp and bright, making the fine crow's feet at the corners of her eyes look exceptionally sharp. When Xiao Pingon entered, Steward Mu was reprimanding a red-robed deacon. There are many people who have been swept into the god-slaying bug world by the spatial turbulence, possibly in the millions. Many of them have already perished. The information from Mount Du-Yin has been verified, so I'll leave the rest to you. After you find those people, take them directly to Myriad Spirit's city and let them settle down. If you encounter anyone who dares to harm the people of Myriad God's planet, regardless of which sect they are from, kill them if necessary. You can deal with them as you see fit, and the Myriad God sect will take care of everything. Steward Mu's words were as cold as ice. Yes. The red-robed deacon bowed and left. Before he left, he happened to bump into Xiao Pingon. He glanced at Xiao Pingon before the two of them brushed past each other. Liang Tian. If not for the fact that he had changed his body, Xiao Pingon would have greeted Liang Tian. What a coincidence! He did not expect to see an old acquaintance of the Undying Sea here after leaving it. What a coincidence! Liang Tian did not know that the horse-faced, triangular-eyed summoner was also an old acquaintance of his. After receiving the mission, he left in a hurry. Steward Mu, the person is here. The Myriad God sect disciple who brought Xiao Pingon here reported. Greetings, Steward Mu. Xiao Pingon bowed to Steward Mu in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Steward Mu glanced at Xiao Pingon and waved his hand. A ray of light flashed, and an ancient 8 trigrams bronze mirror was summoned in front of Xiao Pingon. The bronze mirror was more than 3 feet long and round. There were 8 trigrams patterns around the bronze mirror, and it looked extremely abstruse. The bronze mirror emitted a faint white light and flew around Xiao Pingon, illuminating his body. However, Xiao Pingon's body and appearance did not change at all in the bronze mirror. He still looked the same as before. Seeing this, Steward Mu nodded and waved his hand, causing the bronze mirror to disappear. Xiao Pingon felt that the bronze mirror was similar to the reflection mirror. However, he did not expect that the bronze mirror could be summoned using a technique. That's right. This is your true appearance. There is no hiding. Steward Mu nodded and said slowly, I heard from Steward Chi that your strength is not bad and you're already at the peak of the reflection realm. Moreover, your body is strong and your divine power is extraordinary. Why do you want to come to the Myriad God sect to be a man of sacrifice? If I don't become a man of sacrifice, how can I quickly obtain the holy spring of the Nether Passage realm? Xiao Pingon said in a slightly hoarse voice. You don't look very old. Why are you in such a hurry? The path to becoming a god is to go against the current and seize every moment. If I don't even dare to go to the Myriad God planet and am afraid of death, how can I become a god? Xiao Pingon was still cold and arrogant. Good, you have ambition. Steward Mu smiled and looked at Xiao Pingon with admiration. If you dare to go, there will naturally be a holy spring. Give me the holy spring, and I can go now. Xia Pingan was not afraid at all. Steward Mu looked at Xia Pingan and nodded. He did not say anything else, and just waved his hand to let the white-robed disciple take Xia Pingan away. After leaving, Xia Pingan understood that the red-robed deacon in charge of the assessment was not sure if he had any problems, so he had specially asked someone to bring him to Steward Mu. Now that Steward Mu had nodded, it meant that he had passed. The white-robed disciple did not bring Xia Pingan back to the drill ground. Instead, he brought Xia Pingan into a heavily guarded and spacious underground passage. After walking for more than 10 minutes in the underground passage, Xia Pingan saw the end of the underground passage. It was in the belly of a huge mountain. In the middle of the mountain, there was a pitch-black spatial crack that was more than 10 meters long. It was slowly twisting and turning like a whirlpool. Dark red light shone out from the spatial crack. In addition to the light, one could also see lightning and thunder on the other side of the spatial crack. The outline of a huge planet could be faintly seen. Xia Pingan was slightly shocked. Could it be that this place led to the myriad god planet? The white-robed disciple who had brought him here asked Xia Pingan to wait here before leaving. Xia Pingan did not move. This was because other than a few white-robed disciples, there was also a red-robed deacon in charge. The red-robed deacon was sitting cross-legged above the spatial crack with his eyes closed. He seemed to be indifferent to everything that was happening in the belly of the mountain, like a sculpture floating in the air. However, the aura of a seven-sun realm expert emitted from his body was extremely intimidating. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, Xia Pingan saw Deacon Shi, who had previously assessed him, walk in with more than 20 people. Needless to say, the others who did not come must have been eliminated. Deacon Shi seemed to already know that Xia Pingan was here. When he saw Xia Pingan, he was not surprised. After bringing everyone here, he pointed at the spatial crack in the belly of the mountain. This spatial crack leads to the myriad god planet. Back then, the myriad god sect chose to build their side courtyard here because of this spatial crack. Grand Spirit Mountain is the place with the most spatial cracks and void, mystic realms in the god-slaying bug world. As expected, Xia Pingan thought to himself, Deacon Shi, can you give us the divine spring now? We can go over there now. The summoner with messy hair in the crowd could no longer hold himself back. He stepped forward and said in a rough voice. This guy was also the first to lift the Iron Lion. The divine spring will be given to you, but not now. Before you go over, let me tell you about the rules of our myriad god sect. Deacon Shi scanned the crowd. In order to prevent people from secretly using the spatial turbulence to come back after bathing in the divine spring, everyone has to eat this thing before going over there. As Deacon Shi spoke, he moved his hand and a pitch-black elixir appeared in his hand. Seeing that thing, Xia Pingan's nose twitched and his expression changed slightly. Xia Pingan felt that the elixir's aura seemed to have a strange connection with the surrounding environment and energy. Something was wrong. If not for the fact that Xia Pingan's soul power had grown to an unimaginable level, he would not have felt that the elixir could interact with the environment. This elixir was too strange. Deacon Shi, what is this? Xia Pingan asked directly. This is poison. The moment Deacon Shi spoke, the surrounding people's expressions changed. Deacon Shi continued, this is a special poison refined by the myriad god sect. This poison is refined using a special item from the god-slaying bug world. After eating this poison, if you enter the myriad god planet and return to the god-slaying bug world, the poison's medicinal properties will be triggered by the environment of the god-slaying bug world. Those below the Eight Suns realm will turn into pus and blood. What does the myriad god sect mean by this? They actually want to give us poison? Someone in the crowd shouted. I'm not done yet. This poison will be completely digested within half an hour after you eat it. If you eat this poison and you're in any place outside the god-slaying insect realm, this poison won't take effect. It won't cause any harm or toxicity to you. On the contrary, it'll be a little beneficial. Only in the god-slaying insect realm will this poison be triggered. At the same time, this poison will dissolve and disappear under 3 circumstances, unable to cause any harm to you. What are the 3 conditions? The first condition is that if you advance to the Eight Suns realm and the secret mandala changes again, the medicinal properties of this poison will completely disappear. The second condition is that 70 years after eating this poison, the medicinal properties of this poison will naturally disappear. If you eat this poison and enter the myriad god planet, there are only two possibilities under normal circumstances. First, you can advance to the Eight Suns realm on the myriad god planet. Second, you can live as a human on the myriad god planet for 70 years. Of course, another condition is that the myriad god sect has some missions on the myriad god planet. If you can complete those missions, you may be rewarded. Those rewards will accelerate the decomposition of this poison in your body in advance, shortening the time you have to live and fight on the myriad god planet. Other than these three conditions, if you take this poison and return to the god-slaying bug world without permission before the poison dissolves completely, it will be equivalent to committing suicide. Everyone finally understood that this was the method the myriad god sect used to control the men of sacrifice entering the myriad god planet. That means that once we reach the god-slaying bug world, we will have to listen to the orders of the myriad god sect. You want us to be cannon fodder? Do we have to go? Someone in the crowd immediately shouted. If you reach the myriad god planet and do not wish to carry out the missions of the myriad god sect, that is completely fine. The myriad god sect will not force you to carry out any missions. Of course, if you can complete the missions of the myriad god sect, you will be able to obtain the antidote and rewards from the myriad god sect. All of this is voluntary. Let me put more harshly, as long as you can keep yourself alive, even if you find a place to dig a hole and live for 70 years, you can return to the god-slaying bug world after the medicinal properties of this poison have worn off. The myriad god sect will definitely not find trouble with you. If the myriad god sect does not have the means to ensure that you will stay on a myriad god planet, wouldn't the myriad god sect become a spendthrift that provides free divine spring water to others? How can there be such a foolish sect in this world? At this point, Manager Chi smiled. With a wave of his hand, a wax pill containing poison appeared in his hand. Everyone, you can consider it. The myriad god sect will not force you. If you have thought it through, you can come to me to collect a poison pill. After consuming it, you will be able to pass through the spatial crack. The divine spring is on the myriad god planet and has been prepared. Once you reach the myriad god planet, you can take it. If you wish to withdraw, you do not need to consume this poison. Just turn around and leave. Someone in the crowd hesitated for a moment before turning around to leave. He had chosen to give up. However, Xia Pingan walked over. Under Manager Chi's gaze, he took a wax pill and opened it. He opened his mouth and swallowed the poison within. Then he turned around and was the first to fly into the spatial crack that led to the myriad god planet. Chapter 589. The moment he entered the spatial rift, Xia Pingan felt his body rapidly spiraling and sinking. It was as if there were dark red flames and shadows flying around him. At the same time, the poison he had swallowed began to rapidly digest. That poison was prepared by the 10,000 god sect for a summoner in the Sixth Sun realm. Therefore, it was very special. Almost the moment it entered his mouth, the poison dissolved and was immediately absorbed by his digestive tract. Then, a trace of strange energy entered Xia Pingan's consciousness and brain. As the energy spread out, a lot of information and images appeared in Xia Pingan's mind. Although what humans ate was essentially biological information, it was the work of a high pharmacist to add images and information that could enter one's consciousness and mental domain into pills or food that could be eaten. Through the information, Xia Pingan saw a three-dimensional map of the entire Pantheon planet in his mind. He also understood the general situation of the Pantheon planet. Most importantly, through the three-dimensional map, Xia Pingan also knew the location of the seven-sun realm divine spring that the 10,000 god sect had prepared for him. It was a coordinate named C-1768 by the 10,000 god sect. The information in the poison told Xia Pingan that the seven-sun realm divine spring that the 10,000 god sect had prepared for him was in a special container underground at this coordinate. As long as Xia Pingan reached this coordinate, he would be able to find the divine spring after searching for it. C-1768's coordinate was at a place called Chinio Plain on Pantheon Planet. This place was marked in great detail on the three-dimensional map that appeared in Xia Pingan's mind. The 10,000 God sect was really scheming. If one did not consume this poison, they would not know where the divine spring that the 10,000 God sect had prepared for them was. If someone had some strange secret technique that allowed them to spit out the pills that they had swallowed, then they would be working for nothing on Pantheon Planet if they did not consume the poison. After entering the spatial rift, one would appear in a random area on the Myriad God Planet. If one wanted to obtain the divine spring, one had to head to the Thousand Bird Plains. If one encountered danger on the way to the Thousand Bird Plains and died, sorry, but the Myriad God sect could probably use the Seven Sun Realm divine spring again. In the information that appeared in Xia Pingan's mind, the 10,000 God sect also explained why they had hidden the divine spring in the secret spots on Pantheon Planet. This was because if they wanted everyone to absorb the divine spring in the god-slaying bug world before heading to Pantheon Planet, the 10,000 God sect would face a problem. If someone who had absorbed the divine spring and advanced to the Nether Passage realm and then regretted, the 10,000 God sect would most likely lose. Not only would they have to expend the precious Seven Sun Realm divine spring, they would also have to nurture a powerful enemy in the Nether Passage realm. At the same time, the 10,000 God sect. After experiencing a few painful lessons, the 10,000 God sect finally came up with a solution. They placed the divine spring in Pantheon Planet and placed the information in the poison. After consuming the poison, they would enter Pantheon Planet to find and absorb the divine spring. At the same time, they would ensure that both parties would fulfill their agreement. Other than that, the poison also brought them two important pieces of information. The first piece of information was that Pantheon Planet was currently being devoured by the god-slaying bug world. This process would take at least 200 years. During this time, the entire Pantheon Planet would be in a special spatial environment. This spatial environment would not affect the poison that everyone consumed. At the same time, the laws of physics on Pantheon Planet had not changed. There were still modern weapons on Pantheon Planet that could harm summoners. The second piece of information was that the ruling body of Pantheon Planet was called the Pantheon Planet Federation. The Pantheon Planet Federation was made up of the politicians and low-level summoners on Pantheon Planet. They controlled the army on Pantheon Planet. As the 10,000 God sect had completely broken away from the Pantheon Planet Federation's control, the Pantheon Planet Federation's attitude towards the 10,000 God sect was not completely cooperative. They might even be hostile. Now, the entire Pantheon Planet was in chaos. As more and more Zergs and primordial remnant races appeared on Pantheon Planet, the Pantheon Planet Federation could no longer effectively manage the situation. The information in the poison rapidly flashed through Xia Pingan's mind. A gigantic planet that was enveloped in a black and hellish hue appeared in Xia Pingan's vision. It was rapidly expanding, instantly filling up the entire spatial rift's field of vision. Run, those monsters are coming. I heard that the Hongdu Bridge has been blown up. The army guarding the city is retreating. Follow the army and retreat, run. Mommy, my child, sob, 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 sob. After a brief moment of dizziness, the surrounding noise surged into Xia Pingan's ears like a muddy flood. This was only the sound of people. The chaotic sound of people entering the alleyway, filled with junk from the streets outside. In addition to the sound of people, there were also the roar of sirens and the honking of vehicles. In the sky, a plane roared past, bringing a series of rumbles to the city. Panic figures, some moving quickly, some staggering, constantly passed through the alleyway. None of them were interested in stopping to take a look at the dark alleyway. Xia Pingan was in the alleyway, the fog around him gradually dissipating. The other end of the alleyway was blocked by a collapsed three-story building. A large area of ruins was behind Xia Pingan. Beside Xia Pingan's feet were pieces of shattered bricks. He remembered that the last time he experienced such a chaotic scene was when he was hiding from space invasion on Earth. So, this is Pantheon Planet, Xiaopingan muttered to himself. He looked up at the sky, and it was even darker. There was no sun or stars in the sky. Above the canopy of the sky, there was a gigantic dark red crack that covered more than half the sky. It was like the gaping maw of hell. In that dim vision, a dark red beam of sanguine light fell straight down from the sky. There were small puddles formed by sewage on the ground of the alleyway. The sewage in the puddles was vibrating, and there was a faint sound of treads on the ground. A person who looked like a beggar or a vagabond sat on the ground at the entrance of the alleyway. He looked at the crowd running on the street and smiled foolishly. The world in front of him was like a chaotic dance hall in a small town with obscure lights. Everyone was twisting and turning exaggeratedly on the dance floor. Xiaopingan first sensed his body. Everything was normal. Everything was normal in the secret mandala. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief and slowly walk out of the alleyway. Outside the alleyway was a chaotic street. There were people running in panic everywhere. All of them were carrying luggage and dragging their families. The cars on the street were all congested due to traffic accidents. There were constantly people running past Xiaopingan, but no one stopped. In this chaotic crowd, Xiaopingan was as quiet as a black reef amidst the waves. Xiaopingan scanned the street. He wanted to find a bookstore or a place with obvious signs to confirm his location. Unfortunately, there was no bookstore on the street. This was a city that was neither big nor small. There were probably thousands of such cities on Myriad God Planet. There were many words and symbols on the window displays and shop entrances. However, Xiaopingan did not recognize them. They were the language of Myriad God Planet. It was different from any language Xiaopingan knew. However, Xiaopingan could still understand the language spoken by the people here. A pale, bespectacled man in a trench coat ran from behind Xiaopingan. He was sweating profusely and had a pale face. It was as though a ghost was chasing after him. The man wanted to chase after the person in front of him, but as he was running in a panic, he accidentally bumped into Xiaopingan and fell to the ground in a sorry state. The man wanted to curse, but when he saw Xiaopingan's horse-like face and triangular eyes, he could tell that he was not a kind person. He could not help but swallow the curse words that were about to come out of his mouth. Xiaopingan extended his hand and pulled the man up. Cough, cough. May I know the name of this city? Are you crazy? Even if you are, don't block my way. The man glared at Xiaopingan before continuing to run forward while panting. The tremors on the ground became more and more obvious. Xiaopingan looked in the direction where the crowd was running and saw an army appear at the intersection ahead. In front of the army were tanks and armored vehicles. The army was blocked by the fleeing crowd on the street. Take us away. We want to leave too. We are taxpayers. Why are you abandoning us? The crowd clamored and the streets were in chaos. Chapter 590. Behind the army, there were many military trucks and off-road vehicles in the middle of the armored vehicles and tanks. The crowd rushed towards the army, and the street became even more chaotic. Everyone, please make way. Make way for the army. We are carrying out a military mission. According to federal law, obstructing the federal army from carrying out their mission is punishable by life imprisonment. Everyone, please make way. An armed helicopter hovered above the army. The strong cyclone caused the branches and leaves of the trees on both sides of the street to tremble. The loudspeakers on the helicopter were constantly shouting at the crowd below. However, shouting was useless. It was more like throwing a spark into a barrel of oil. The crowd was angry. Despicable, you cowards. You took those officials and rich people and ran away, leaving us behind. Is this your mission? Someone in the crowd shouted angrily. Don't think that we don't know. Those rich people, the officials of Jinlan City, and their families are in your military vehicles. We saw it just now. We are taxpayers. We also asked for the protection of the army. Let those officials and rich people get out of the vehicles. The crowd that blocked the army's vehicles roared angrily. It was reasonable for the crowd to be infuriated. When the crisis arrived, the so-called federal army took a few public servants and lucky people and prepared to move to a safer place, leaving most of the owners and taxpayers behind. Therefore, the fury of those abandoned people started to burn like wildfire. A young man in a trench coat suddenly rushed out of the crowd with a lit Molotov cocktail in his hand. He threw the Molotov cocktail at a military truck in the middle of the army. A flame burst out on the roof of the truck and outside the cabin. Amid the screams, several well-dressed men and women ran out of the truck in panic. At this moment, the people in ordinary clothes who jumped off the military vehicles confirmed everyone's guess. As expected, the rich and the officials all ran away with the army. The crowd became even angrier. Why can they follow you? Is it because they are rich and powerful? A few soldiers rushed towards the young man who threw the Molotov cocktail, while more people rushed towards the vehicles of the troops. The rushing soldiers and the rushing crowd were shoving each other, causing the situation to become even more chaotic. Bah! Amidst the chaos, the sound of a gunshot rang out, and the crowd scattered in panic. They saw that a citizen had fallen to the ground, and in front of that citizen was a soldier pointing a gun at him. They've opened fire, they've killed people, the troops have opened fire. The panicked crowd screamed. Da-da-da! The machine guns on the armored vehicles suddenly opened fire, but they were not aimed at the people. Instead, they were warning shots. The crowd became even more panicked. Previously, everyone thought that the troops would not dare to open fire on them. However, when the troops' gunshots rang out and people fell to the ground, those who had just angrily surrounded them suddenly felt their own panic and vulnerability. This is the final warning. This is the final warning. Everyone, leave immediately. Do not obstruct the operation of the troops. Otherwise, the troops will open fire. The voice from the hovering helicopter was unusually stern. The crowd's anger turned into panic. Faced with the situation in front of him, Xiao Pingan had been watching coldly from the sidelines. He did not want to help anyone. The more critical the situation was, the more the selfishness and ugliness of human nature, as well as the corruption and arrogance of power, were displayed vividly. It was when these things intertwined that chaos and disorder were created. If the situation on Pantheon Planet was on Earth, it would probably be the same. However, the screams of the crowd gave Xiao Pingan a crucial piece of information. This city was Jinlan City. Xiao Pingan instantly completed an accurate location for himself on the three-dimensional map in his mind. Jinlan City was located in the southeast of Pantheon Planet's Rome Estates administrative district. It was about 7,000 kilometers away from Chidiohara C 1,768's coordinates. If one headed west of Jinlan City, they would pass through the Sunlight Mountain Range and the Lunar God Sea. In between, they would cross 5 administrative districts before reaching Chidiohara. Nothing was more important than advancing to the Seven Sun realm. Xiao Pingan was already prepared to leave. However, at this moment, a flame suddenly descended from the sky and accurately struck the helicopter that was hovering above the troops. The armed helicopter instantly burst into flames as it spun and plummeted from the sky, landing directly in the middle of the crowd. The helicopter's spinning blades were like sharp blades and a huge cutting machine. When the spinning blades hit a person, it was enough to shatter a person's body. The tumbling fuselage sliced through the dense crowd with its blades, causing flesh and blood to splatter everywhere. An alley of flesh and blood was formed on the street. It was too tragic. Boom. The helicopter exploded as a large number of people within 50 meters collapsed. And all of this happened in an instant. Everyone was stunned. The demonic bug is here. Countless people in the crowd exclaimed as they began to flee in all directions. In the sky, a ferocious-looking black-winged flaming bug flapped its 2 huge wings and suddenly pierced through the gloomy clouds. Like a dive bomber, it swooped down toward the crowd and troops below at lightning speed. The winged flaming bug spat out a flame from its mouth and swept across the vehicles that were congested on the ground. 7 or 8 military trucks and military off-road vehicles were instantly set ablaze and exploded in the flame of the winged flaming bug. The troops were in chaos. Some of the military trucks and off-road vehicles were occupied by soldiers, while others were occupied by high-ranking officials and rich people in the city. When the vehicles were set ablaze, the people sitting inside instantly turned into torches. One by one, they jumped out of the vehicles while screaming in pain. Their bodies were instantly melted by the flames of the winged flaming bug. The ordinary people who had surrounded the street earlier wished that they had 2 more legs. They wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves as they fled in all directions. 2 missiles from the anti-air vehicles and the troops rose into the air and chased after the winged flaming bug. The armored vehicles on the ground also opened fire at the winged flaming bug. In an instant, the bustling streets of the city turned into a battlefield. The sound of cannons and gunshots filled the city. Boom! The winged flaming bugs that were locked onto by 2 missiles nimbly passed through several buildings on the streets of the city. One of the missiles hit a building, causing a sky full of broken glass to fall from the sky amidst the explosion, smashing countless people's heads and causing them to bleed. A huge piece of broken glass fell from a height of tens of meters, directly cutting the head of a person who was running in a panic into 2 halves. The person fell on the road, scaring the other people who were running beside him and causing them to cry out in fear. Another missile continued to chase after the winged flaming bug. When it reached the back of the winged flaming bug, it was detonated by a fireball that the winged flaming bug spat out. The explosion of the anti-aircraft missile and the violent shockwave were like a huge fireball exploding above the rooftop of a skyscraper, sweeping across the wings of the winged flaming beetle. One of the wings of the winged flaming beetle immediately burst into flames. The winged flaming bug emitted smoke and fell from the sky toward the streets of the city like a falling plane. Its tumbling body rushed past the people who were running in a panic on the ground. More than 10 people were smashed into pieces by the winged flaming bug and became minced meat all over the ground. There was not 1 winged flaming bug, but 2. Just as this winged flaming bug was injured and fell to the ground, another winged flaming bug flew from another direction and faced the people who were running in a panic. A flame descended from the sky and swept through the people. Dozens of people were burned by the flame of the winged flaming bug and melted like candles. 2 more anti-air missiles were shot over. Apart from the winged flaming bug, a few huge black mantis blade bugs also quietly appeared at the other end of the street. Seeing the appearance of the mantis blade bugs, a few tanks and the troops rushed over and fiercely opened fire at the mantis blade bugs that were rushing over. The moment the tanks opened fire, the ordinary people who were near them were directly hit by the cannons of the tanks. Their ears bled as they held their heads and fell to the ground while screaming. Chapter 591. In just half a minute, the originally bustling street had turned into a mess. Amidst the roars of guns and cannons, the city had become the battlefield of the Pantheon planet. At this time, the people who had rushed towards the troops ran in the opposite direction like a reverse tide. They were all terrified, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. Each of them threw down the luggage in their hands and ran for their lives with pale faces. The winged flaming beetle, whose wings had been damaged by the missile, fell on the street about 100 meters away from Xiaopinggan. The surrounding streets were filled with people who were running away. When the winged flaming bug picked itself up from the ruins by shaking its head and flapping its wings, its eyes turned red at once at the sight of the escaping crowd on the street. At the same time, the scorching heat started to gather in its mouth part once again. "Daddy! Daddy!" An 11 or 12-year-old girl stood in front of the winged flaming beetle. She was so shocked by the winged flaming beetle that she forgot to run away. She just stood there blankly with a pale face and called out, "Daddy!" The winged flaming beetle standing in front of her was like a terrifying behemoth. "Highway, run!" A man in his 40s shouted at the little girl as he rushed over with all his might. When the winged flaming beetle was about to spit out flames to destroy the surrounding streets, a sword light that couldn't be captured by the naked eye flashed by. Closely after that, a sharp sonic boom sounded in the air. At the same time, the head of the winged flaming beetle suddenly fell to the ground, causing its huge body to lie flat on the ground. In a flash, Xiao Pingon was standing on the winged flaming beetle's head. He was holding the 7-star sword whip in his hand, which had already transformed into a long whip. He shook his head slightly. After receiving benefits from the Pantheon sect, Xiao Pingon felt that he had no choice but to take action. Since he was going to save someone, there might be a realm pearl in the winged, flaming beetle's body. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. With a thought, the huge body of the winged flaming beetle was stored in the secret mandala by Xiao Pingon. In the next second, Xiao Pingon's figure flashed and arrived in front of the little girl. In the next second, Xiao Pingon and the little girl appeared in front of the little girl's father. "Hurry up and take the child away from here." Xiao Pingon handed the little girl to her father and disappeared in a flash. The little girl's father was stunned for a few seconds before he hurriedly left with his child. Xiao Pingon's speed was so fast that the man couldn't see it clearly. Boom, boom, 2 balls of fire exploded in the sky. The windows of the nearby buildings, as well as some of the roofs of the buildings, were all shattered. Countless glass and building debris flew around like raindrops. There were 2 missiles that had been detonated by the other winged flame bug. After detonating the 2 missiles, the winged flame bug made a nimble turn in the sky and dove down at high speed. Just as it was about to turn the street into a sea of fire, Xiao Pingon suddenly appeared on its back. With a twist of the sword whip, the blade cut through the winged flame bug's head at supersonic speed. The winged flame bug's head and body were instantly separated in the air. Before the 2 halves of the corpse fell to the ground, Xiao Pingon had already stored it in the secret mandala. In the past, it wasn't difficult for Xiao Pingon to deal with these winged flame bugs at the 6th Sun Realm. As long as these winged flame bugs didn't have an absolute advantage in numbers, they would be nothing more than food for Xiao Pingon's supreme-grade soul tool. Furthermore, Xiao Pingon was now at the quasi-7th Sun Realm. It would be even easier for him to deal with 1 or 2 winged flame bugs. After easily killing the 2 winged flame bugs, Xiao Pingon turned around and charged towards the mantis blade bugs again. Boom, boom, boom. The tank's armor-piercing shells kept exploding around the mantis blade bugs. However, the mantis blade bugs relied on their nimble dodging and darted on the street. 2 of them even jumped onto the buildings on the side of the street and used their terrifying legs to grab onto the exterior walls of the buildings as they moved forward quickly. After the mantis blade bugs crawled over the walls of the buildings, they left deep marks on the walls, and the steel bars inside were exposed. The shells kept exploding around the mantis blade bugs, and the buildings on both sides of the street were instantly riddled with holes. Some of the buildings had already started to burn. However, the military didn't care about this. To the military, their current mission was to eliminate these invading monsters. They didn't care about the damage their firepower would cause to the buildings on the side of the street. However, at such a close distance, it was very difficult for the tank's cannons to catch up with the mantis blade bugs. Therefore, the hit rate was very low. Even if the armor-piercing shells hit the mantis blade bugs, a layer of black fog would surge out of their bodies. The black fog would dissipate the force of the explosion, but at the same time, the black fog on the mantis blade bugs would be somewhat depleted. The black fog would become thinner and could no longer maintain its original thickness due to the continuous explosions. The military on Myriad God Planet had been battling these invading creatures for a long time. They knew very well that the only way to kill these bugs with the black fog on their bodies was to first deplete the black fog on their bodies. Only then would their armor-piercing shells be able to tear apart the bugs' bodies. Bullets, rockets, and the like flew towards the mantis blade bugs like raindrops. However, this time, the distance between the 2 parties was too close. Less than half of the black fog on the mantis blade bugs' bodies had been depleted. A few mantis blade bugs had already charged into the formation of the military. A few tanks were sliced apart like tofu by the mantis blade bugs' terrifyingly sharp forelimbs and exploded. A tank that weighed tens of tons was sent flying by a mantis blade bug. It crashed heavily into an armored vehicle behind it. A mantis blade bug waved its forelimbs. More than 10 soldiers who were firing were sliced in half and sent flying in all directions. Once the mantis blade bugs got close, It was as if they were invincible. The military was already in chaos. Armor battalion, cover us. The other battalions, retreat. Retreat. Retreat first. Call for support from the Land Air Force. The commanders yelled as they retreated amidst the hail of bullets. At this moment, Xiao Pingan had already charged over. As he was too fast, the panicking soldiers around him did not even realize that someone had entered the battlefield. A mantis blade bug had just overturned an armored vehicle when Xiao Pingan had already flown onto the back of that mantis blade bug. With one strike, he killed the mantis blade bug and stored its corpse in the secret mandala. At the same time, he leaped up and dodged the attack of another mantis blade bug that had discovered his arrival. With another strike, he killed another mantis blade bug and stored its corpse in the secret mandala. In just a few seconds, the few mantis blade bugs that had just charged into the military were all killed by Xiao Pingan and stored in the secret mandala. A few seconds later, the panicking and retreating troops suddenly realized that amidst the chaos and smoke of the explosions, the mantis blade bugs that had just charged into the armor battalion had suddenly disappeared. The flaming bug that had been in the sky earlier seemed to have disappeared as well. Everyone was still in shock and did not know what had happened. Xiao Pingan had already used his illusion to conceal himself. He stood in the sky above the city and looked down at the troops that were gradually retreating and the people that were still fleeing in all directions. Thick smoke rose from the ground and into the sky. The streets that were filled with blood were in a mess. Many buildings were still burning, and the corpses had not been collected in time. Xiao Pingan shook his head and muttered to himself, "It should be about time. Good luck to the rest." Standing at this height and looking toward the west of the city, he could indeed see the undulating mountain range on the horizon to the west of the city. That should be the Sunlight Mountain Range. After passing through the Sunlight Mountain Range and crossing the sea, he should be able to reach the coordinates of C-1768, where he had hidden the Seven Suns' divine spring. Xiao Pingan did not delay any longer. He flew into the clouds and concealed himself as he quickly flew toward the west. If there were no accidents, he would be able to reach Chinio Plain in half a day. More than 10 minutes later, Xiao Pingan had just flown over 100 kilometers and was in the wilderness. Suddenly, Xiao Pingan felt a sense of danger. He did not even think about it. With a thought, for layers of spinning ice shields that were several meters thick appeared above his head and surrounded him. Boom! There was a sudden clap of thunder as golden snakes danced in the sky. A bolt of lightning fell on Xiao Pingan's head. Several layers of thick ice shields instantly shattered and evaporated above Xiao Pingan's head. The remnant force of the lightning spread to Xiao Pingan. Xiao Pingan felt his chest tighten and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Half of his body suddenly went numb, and his hair stood on end amidst the lightning that coiled around his body. The small part of his robe that he was wearing was also shattered by the lightning. This lightning was too terrifying. It had been premeditated for a long time, and judging from its power, it was definitely not something a Six-Sun Realm summoner could release. Even though Xiao Pingan could summon lightning by himself, this time he was still caught unprepared. However, this was not all. Just as the lightning fell, a summoned flame giant that was dozens of meters tall appeared in the clouds beside Xiao Pingan. The flame giant floated in the sky and stretched out its hand to grab Xiao Pingan. F*CK. This was the time to truly test a summoner's reaction. Just as the flame giant's hands were about to grab him, a golden lotus appeared under Xiao Pingan's feet. The poem in 7 Steps Divine Skill instantly erupted, and he disappeared from his original spot and appeared in front of the flame giant's head in an instant. Die! Xiao Pingan roared and slashed the 7-star sword into the flame giant's head. He controlled the sword with both hands and ruthlessly pulled it down from the flame giant's head. The flame giant that was dozens of meters tall was instantly cut in half by Xiao Pingan's sword and instantly turned into light and disappeared. Not bad, not bad. You actually managed to escape from my ambush, avoid my 5-blow thunderclap, and kill the tier 3 flame giant I summoned. This body of yours is not bad. A cold voice rang out in the sky. Xiao Pingan looked up and saw a summoner with a face full of wrinkles and a head full of silver hair standing in front of him. That person's body was surging with a layer of faint black fog, and his eyes were blood red and carried a powerful pressure with them. Xia Pinggan's pupils shrank. No, this was not a human, but an ancient race. Chapter 592. To be honest, this was the first time Xia Pinggan had heard someone praise his body for being in such a good condition. Xia Pinggan would have gladly accepted it if it had been a woman praising him. However, when the person praising him was an archaic race member, Xia Pinggan instantly felt goosebumps all over his body. The ancient remnant races weren't humans. They were only monsters that occupied the bodies of humans. To them, all humans were targets that they could seize. The archaic race member looked at Xia Pinggan with a sinister and greedy smile on his face. He even stuck out his scarlet tongue to lick his lips. His eyes were filled with undisguised greed, like a hungry wolf looking at bloody meat. Judging from his aura, this archaic race member was already a seven-sun realm summoner. Xia Pinggan quickly calmed down amid the crisis and assessed the situation before him. It wasn't a coincidence that this ancient race member had appeared here. Rather, this ancient race member had been in that city before. He had appeared together with those insectoids, but he had been hiding nearby. It was only after Lin Fan had killed those insectoids that Lin Fan was exposed. Then, he had been ambushed. The only good news was that there was only one archaic race member ambushing him. If there were two, there would be no need for the other one to hide. Moreover, this archaic race member didn't know much about Luo Yunyang's abilities. Ha ha ha, you can't escape. Your body is mine. Your soul tool is also mine. The archaic race member was afraid that a long delay would lead to trouble. As he spoke, he suddenly flew towards Xia Pinggan. With a wave of his hand, dozens of scorching fireballs blasted towards Xia Pinggan, sealing off all of Xia Pinggan's escape routes. The fireballs summoned by a seven-sun realm powerhouse and the fireballs summoned by an ordinary summoner were on a completely different level, be it in terms of power or speed. As the fireballs soared through the sky, the scorching heat caused the surrounding air to distort violently. There was also a rumbling sound as the fireballs changed their trajectories and intertwined into a huge wheel of fire. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived in front of Xia Pinggan. A lotus flower once again appeared under Xia Pinggan's feet. This was the divine technique of lotus blossoming step. At this moment, Xia Pinggan maximized the effect of this divine technique. Once the lotus flower appeared, even if he was in a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, he would be able to open a path. With a flash, Xia Pinggan dodged the roaring fireballs in the air and appeared 100 meters away in an instant. Xia Pinggan didn't say a word. He was like a shooting star as he charged toward the ground. Xia Pinggan had many techniques, such as array formations and earth escape techniques, but they could only be used when he was close to the ground. He couldn't gain any advantage against this archaic being in the air. He only had a chance when he was close to the ground. You want to run? Not so easy. When the archaic being saw Xia Pinggan's movements, he turned around and chased after Xia Pinggan. Boom, boom. Two bolts of lightning appeared in the sky at almost the same time. One bolt of lightning blasted toward Xia Pinggan, while the other bolt blasted toward the archaic being. Xia Pinggan and the archaic being both summoned lightning and blasted each other at the same time. But at this time, the terror and strength of the ancient remnant was revealed. Xia Pinggan's summoned lightning directly struck the ancient remnant's body, but it was blocked by the layer of black fog that surged around the ancient remnant's body. After the lightning strike, the black fog around the ancient remnant's body tumbled, but only became slightly thinner. It rushed towards Xia Pinggan without any hindrance. When the other bolt of lightning blasted towards Xia Pinggan, the huge pitch-black figure of Xuanwu suddenly appeared above Xia Pinggan's head. The tortoise-like Xuanwu was like a huge umbrella protecting Xia Pinggan. Xia Pinggan held Xuanwu with both hands as if he was holding a huge shield. At the moment when the lightning fell, Xuanwu's snake head turned to look at Xia Pinggan. That look conveyed a rich message. You're actually using me as a shield? Xiao Pingan also looked at Xuanwu. Who told you to have thick skin? Boom! The bolt of lightning blasted on the thick ice that Xuanwu spat out. The ice was completely shattered and vaporized in an instant. The remaining lightning fell on Xuanwu's thick black tortoise shell, causing Xuanwu's tortoise shell to suddenly emit a blue light. It sizzled and emitted countless tiny electric sparks. Xiao Pingan was originally flying towards the ground, but after being struck by the lightning, it was as if he had received a boost. He suddenly sped up and fiercely flew towards the ground. The ancient race member's expression changed. He didn't expect Xiao Pingan to use such a move while escaping. He continued to chase after Xiao Pingan, but the Xuanwu above Xiao Pingan's head turned and spat out icicles at him like a machine gun. That ancient race member was also very powerful. With a wave of his hand, fireballs flew out one after another, constantly melting the icicles that Xuanwu spat out. But Xiao Pingan didn't stay idle. The moment those icicles melted, Xiao Pingan raised Xuanwu with one hand and took out a thunder talisman with the other, throwing it at that ancient race member. Those thunder talismans were palm-sized golden pieces, and each piece had the word thunder written on it. After Xiao Pingan grasped the spell to summon the Wui divine thunder, he also grasped the word thunder. Xiao Pingan used the word thunder to refine a thunder talisman for himself. At this time, the thunder talisman really showed its effect. As Xiao Pingan threw out the thunder talisman, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and directly hit that ancient race member. The effect of this thunder talisman wasn't something that fireballs and icicles could compare to. The lightning that came out of the talisman was as fast as lightning, and it was simply impossible to guard against. In an instant, the lightning scattered in the sky. That ancient race member was like a light bulb in the sky, dazzling to the eye. The thunder talisman dissipated some of the black gas on that ancient race member's body. Let's see what other tricks you have. That ancient race member was also angry. He sneered and waved his hand, summoning a bone dragon. The bone dragon roared and fiercely flew towards Xiao Pingan. But in the next second, the smile on that ancient race member's face froze, because he saw Xiao Pingan take out a thick thunder talisman. Xiao Pingan threw out the thunder talismans one after another. Thunder wildly danced in the sky, and that bone dragon was directly blown apart by 2 thunder talismans. The remaining thunder talismans turned into lightning and fell on that ancient race member's body, hindering that ancient race member's movements and making him have no choice but to divert his attention to deal with the lightning that kept falling on his body. The black gas on that ancient race member's body had no problem blocking 2 or 3 bolts of lightning. But facing the constant barrage of lightning, that ancient race member couldn't withstand it with just his body. He had no choice but to summon a thick ice shield to resist Xiao Pingan's thunder talismans. Some high-level spells had a cooldown time limit, but the lightning talisman didn't have a cooldown time limit. This was the difference between the two. Wah wah wah! That ancient race member angrily shouted in the air. While defending against the thunder talismans, he kept shooting out fireballs from his hands. Every time he got close to Xiao Pingan, he would be blown away by the thunder talismans. And all his attacks towards Xiao Pingan were blocked by the shield-like Xuanwu. At the same time, Xiao Pingan accelerated towards the ground. Normally, Xuanwu would have already dissipated several times by now. But Xiao Pingan kept pouring divine power into Xuanwu's body so that the huge shield above his head didn't dissipate. Looking from afar, one could see streaks of fire chasing after lightning bolts falling from the sky. 2 seconds later, Xiao Pingan steadily landed on the ground. In the next second, several tens of huge, scorching fireballs descended from the sky and landed on the ground, melting the rocks on the ground and overturning the soil. The area within a few hundred square meters of where Xiao Pingan landed was turned into scorched earth. Not a single blade of grass grew, and lava surged. But Xiao Pingan had already disappeared. That ancient race member thought that Xiao Pingan was using some sort of trick to escape. He waved his hand and summoned a net from all directions. Thousands of fire arrows fell from the sky like raindrops, completely covering the ground in a 1-mile radius. It was like a rain of fire. The net didn't move at all. The falling fire arrows passed through the sky and the ground, but they didn't hit any hidden targets. Not a single fire arrow's flight path was changed. Seeing this, that ancient race member was stunned. His eyes flashed with an ominous glint, and he finally let out an unwilling roar. Chapter 593. Wah! Tens of thousands of meters underground, Xia Pingan, who had just shaken off the primordial race's pursuit, suddenly appeared in a crack in a damp limestone underground. He could no longer hold back the mouthful of blood in his throat and spat it out. After spitting out this mouthful of blood, Xia Pingan felt much better as the stifling feeling in his chest and abdomen dissipated. The strength of a seven-sun realm cultivator was not to be underestimated. That primordial race wasn't an ordinary seven-sun realm cultivator. He was probably a very experienced seven-sun realm cultivator. Previously, when Xia Pingan flew down from the sky, Xuanwu had endured countless attacks with his thick skin and flesh. He looked fine on the surface, but in reality, his internal organs had been shaken and he had been injured. It was just that his injuries weren't serious. Damn it, this primordial race is too difficult to deal with. The layer of black fog on their body is even more powerful than the black fog on the mantis blade bug. It can resist almost all kinds of spells. I used so many thunder talismans, but I still couldn't kill him. They are summoners and can even use summoner spells. How am I supposed to fight this battle? Xia Pingan muttered to himself. He smiled bitterly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. With a move of his hand, he took out a bottle of elixirs from his interspatial equipment. He poured out a few elixirs, raised his head, and swallowed them. As the elixirs entered his throat, they turned into a wave of heat that quickly spread to Xia Pingan's internal organs, limbs, and bones. The stifling feeling in his chest and abdomen finally dissipated. However, although it was dangerous this time, Xia Pingan suddenly had a strong sense of confidence in his own strength. Unknowingly, he was already able to exchange blows with a seven-sun realm primordial race cultivator and escape unscathed. If this was a year ago, he wouldn't even have dared to think about it. Back then, the flame rhinoceros had almost tortured him to death. Now, if the flame rhinoceros were to stand in front of him, the one being tortured would probably be the flame rhinoceros. However, this battle had also given Xia Pingan a wake-up call. It made Xia Pingan feel an intense sense of crisis. Encountering this ancient race member had already caused Xia Pingan to reveal his two life-saving trump cards, the Earth Escape Technique and the Thunder Talisman. Fortunately, there weren't many people who could use the Earth Escape Technique. If he were to encounter an ancient race member who could use the Earth Escape Technique next time, what would he do? Wouldn't that mean that there was no path to heaven and no door to hell, and he could only wait to be slaughtered? This myriad god planet is more dangerous than I imagined. I have to bathe in the divine spring and advance to the seven-sun realm as soon as possible. Then, I have to raise my array formation skills and create a few powerful array discs. Array formations are also a life-saving weapon. Xia Pingan muttered to himself as his eyes revealed a determined look. After resting for a moment, Xia Pingan once again swallowed a handful of Shunli Dan. With a turn of his body, he burrowed back into the ground and began his journey underground using the Earth Escape Technique. There was still more than 7,000 kilometers between here and the Thousand Birds Plain. In fact, flying was the most convenient way to travel such a long distance, as it was both fast and labor-saving. However, Xia Pingan still had a lingering fear in his heart after being ambushed by the ancient race. He didn't know what other strange methods the ancient race had, so to be on the safe side, he simply used up several times the amount of his divine power and directly used the Earth Escape Technique to travel underground, heading towards the Thousand Birds Plain. At such a time, everything had to make way for him to advance to the Seven Sun Realm. Using the Earth Escape Technique to travel 5,000 kilometers consumed a significant amount of his divine power. Every once in a while, Xiao Pingan would find an underground crevice or space to rest for a moment. He would eat some Shinli Dan to recover his stamina before continuing his journey. If he was tired, he would find a place to come out and release the array disc. He would then sleep before continuing his journey. Sometimes, afraid that he would get lost underground and deviate from his path, Xiao Pingan would even show his head above ground to check out his surroundings and correct his direction before continuing his journey. Xiao Pingan's caution was actually correct. When the ancient race member saw that Xiao Pingan had the ability to escape underground, he was even more unwilling to let Xiao Pingan escape. The ancient race member pretended to have left his original spot, but in fact, he had used all his means on the ground. He used a mystic technique to summon countless birds and beasts. He scattered them in the sky to monitor the situation in a radius of hundreds of kilometers, waiting for Xiao Pingan to show himself. The ancient race member waited for 3 days and searched 500 kilometers to the west of Jinlan City. After failing to discover anything, he reluctantly left. Thousand Bird Plains was a vast sparse grassland on Myriad God Planet. This sparse grassland had countless lakes of various sizes. There were also some hills. Between the lakes and the grassland were large swaths of wetlands. These lakes were once beautiful and tranquil, a paradise for birds. Nearly 1,000 species of birds lived here, so it was named Thousand Bird Plains. 5 days later, Thousand Bird Plains. Bang! With the sound of a gunshot, a group of elegant white swans flew up from the wetland by the lake. However, there are also a few white swans whose bodies were pierced by the small steel balls. Their feathers scattered, and their bodies were bathed in blood. They suddenly fell to the side of the water. Quick, there's meat to eat. The grassland by the lake stirred as a tanned hunter with a shotgun and a few people who looked like vagabonds emerged from the grassland. They paddled a crude wooden raft across the water and rushed towards the few white swans that had been shot down. They excitedly grabbed the blood-covered swans. The gunshot sounded into the distance, startling countless birds. It also gave Xiao Pingan, who had just emerged from the ground, a fright. He thought that something had happened. Xiao Pingan was extremely cautious as he immediately summoned Child of Fortune. He made Child of Fortune fly out and rush towards the source of the gunshot. In a flash, Child of Fortune arrived by the lake and saw the gun-wielding men fishing out the swans from the water. There was nothing abnormal about the surroundings. This peaceful thousand-bird plains was filled with abundant water and grass. There were no monsters wreaking havoc, and it also provided natural food. At this moment, some vagabonds and refugees who had fled from the city had already barged into the area. These vagabonds and refugees had set up tents by the water's edge and were temporarily living a semi-secluded life in the wilderness. After discovering that there were no abnormal threats around him, Xiao Pingan heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at his surroundings and quickly located the coordinates of C-1768. C-1768's coordinates were in a sparse woodland near the lake. Xiao Pingan, who had arrived, immediately saw a tall tree that had been charred by lightning. The tree had existed here for countless years, and its entire body was pitch black like a fossil. It had already lost all its vitality. C-1768's coordinates were that tree. Xiao Pingan came to the charred tree and looked around. Without much effort, he found an anomaly in the soil about 5 or 6 meters below the roots of the tree. Something seemed to be hidden in the soil. For a Six-Sun Realm summoner, it was a piece of cake for them to take out the items hidden beneath the soil. Xiao Pingan directly burrowed underground and saw what was there. It was a huge crystal cluster about half a meter long. The crystal cluster was densely covered with strange runes. The center of the crystal cluster was hollowed out, and the entire crystal cluster had become a container. Some golden liquid was swaying in the center of the crystal cluster. Not to mention anything else. Just the value of this crystal cluster that contained the 7-Sun Realm Divine Spring was not inferior to a magic artifact. Next to this crystal cluster was another small piece of crystal. There was a string of numbers on that small piece of crystal. It was a coordinate, and the words 10,000 Gods Sect Contact Point were written in the language of the Yuanxiu world. These things were buried deep underground and could not be detected by metal detectors. They were obviously prepared for summoners who came here. Xiao Pingan reached out his hand and caressed the crystal cluster. The crystal cluster had merged with the surrounding soil, but it also emitted a special energy that made people feel happy. A bit of divine power seeped into the crystal cluster, and when the liquid in the crystal cluster sensed that bit of divine power, it immediately lit up, and the light was resplendent. It was indeed the seven-sun realm divine spring. Xiao Pingan was overjoyed. Heaven did not disappoint the faithful. He had finally found it. In the next second, Xiao Pingan directly took the crystal cluster from the soil and put it in the small piece of crystal with the coordinates of 10,000 gods sect contact point into his spatial equipment. Then, he quickly used Earth Escape to leave this place. Chapter 594. Serene. Yes, it was hidden, quiet, and profound. The ethereal opening realm was the most important checkpoint in a summoner's power system. Without advancing to the ethereal opening realm, it would be difficult to reach that hidden realm that was unknown to outsiders. Previously, Xiao Pingan didn't quite understand why the ethereal opening realm was so important. It wasn't until he bathed in the divine spring of the ethereal opening realm and saw the earth-shattering changes that occurred in the secret mandala that Xiao Pingan finally had a sliver of understanding towards the ethereal opening realm tens of thousands of meters deep underground in Xinyao Plain. Xiao Pingan melted a hard rock wall in a dense underground rock. He then used the formation plate to construct a hidden shelter for himself in the rock wall. After that, he started to bathe in the holy spring in this shelter. At this realm, Xiao Pingan no longer needed to lie in the tub while bathing in the divine spring. He sat naked in the air with his legs crossed. Below him was the black Xuanwu. Xuanwu was controlling a ball of water to envelop Xiao Pingan's body. The divine spring had already fused with the water and was completely absorbed by Xiao Pingan's body. Xiao Pingan's body was like the sun, flashing with a layer of golden light. Meanwhile, Xiao Pingan's secret mandala was once again turned upside down. The seventh sun finally condensed and appeared in Xiao Pingan's secret mandala. Firmament City's area expanded once again. Outside Firmament City, there were mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas. All of a sudden, 9 provinces appeared. In the distant sea opposite Firmament City, a few immortal islands were faintly discernible. The secret mandala expanded once again. All the soldiers and avatars that could be summoned in the secret mandala had their fighting strength and planar descent time greatly increased under the 7 Sun Realm support. The power of their spells also increased by a level. Most importantly, there was a giant pond and fountain under the Kason Well of the Divine Temple in the secret mandala. Inside the Kason Well of the Divine Temple, there were specks of divine power that had formed a whirlpool in the 7 Suns realm. It was like the center of a storm and looked extremely mysterious. Below this whirlpool was the giant golden pond. There was no water in the newly formed pool. It was dry and looked a little strange. While Xiao Pingan was wondering, he saw that Song Jie had already poured all the insect crystals that Xiao Pingan had obtained from the secret warehouse of the mandala into the pool. When the insect crystal entered the pool, it immediately melted and turned into golden ripples. A powerful divine aura spread out from the pool, and the fountain in the pool sprayed out golden splashes. Spiritual light overflowed in all directions, and it was full of vitality. Xiao Pingan was stunned. This was the second source of divine power in the secret mandala. He could directly convert the insect crystals into divine power. He finally understood why the 10,000 God sect wanted to collect these insect crystals. 4 high-level summoners. Insect crystals were the fastest way to convert divine power. The insect crystals that Song Jie had thrown out just now directly converted more than 30,000 points of divine power in the divine spring. Xiao Pingan's current divine power limit was 8,877 points. The divine power converted from these insect crystals was more than 4 times his original divine power limit. This was one of the reasons why 7 Sun Realm summoners were so powerful. With so much divine power, they could continuously summon all kinds of people and quickly enrich Firmament City. Half a day later, the golden light emitted by Xia Pingan, who was sitting cross-legged on Xuanwu's back, gradually faded. Xia Pingan also finally opened his eyes. Divine light flashed in Xia Pingan's eyes. There was a dot of darkness in the depths of his eyes. The divine light contained within was exceptionally deep. The blue ball of water flowing around his body instantly dissipated. I'm finally at the 7 Sun Realm. Xia Pingan exhaled deeply. Although there were some twists and turns in the process of advancing to the 7 Sun Realm, this was definitely a milestone for him since he became a summoner. However, there was no one to share the joy in his heart. It was inevitable that he would feel a little lonely. If it was somewhere else, such as in Shangjing City, a summoner advancing to the 7 Sun Realm would definitely be celebrated. It was enough to cause a sensation in the circle. Back in Shangjing City, the strongest summoners he could summon were the Iron Masked Man and the commander of the Judgment Army, Lin Yi. Both of them were at the 7 Sun Realm. However, Lin Yi was a god's chosen one. He had already fused with the Domain Realm Pearl when he was at the 7 Sun Realm and grasped domain skills. He was almost invincible among 7 Sun Realm experts. I wonder where I can get a Domain Realm Pearl? Xia Pingan looked up at the disc array above his head and muttered to himself. A Domain Realm Pearl was too precious. Many summoners had to advance to the 8th Sun Realm to obtain a Domain Realm Pearl. Only then would they have a slight hope of fusing with a Domain Realm Pearl. However, Xia Pingan was confident that as long as it was a Domain Realm Pearl, there was nothing he couldn't fuse with. If a god's chosen one could make it easier for a summoner to fuse with a Domain Realm Pearl, then he might be the greatest god's chosen one in the world. However, he could put the matter of the Domain Realm Pearl aside for now. There was something he had to deal with right now. When he was fusing with the 7 Sun Realm Divine Spring, the Divine Spring cleansed every cell and organ in Xia Pingan's body. It almost completed another internal reconstruction and strengthening of Xia Pingan's body. Xia Pingan was very aware of this process. He originally wanted to use this process to sense where the poison in the 10,000 God Sex poison was hidden in his body. Then, he would think of a way to get rid of the poison. Xia Pingan didn't want to renege on the 10,000 God Sex debt. However, he knew that he had a responsibility. The heaven mending plan was very important. He just didn't want his life to be in the hands of others. Now, it seemed that the 10,000 God Sect had fulfilled their agreement with him. However, what if the 10,000 God Sect left a way to control him in the poison? He had to be careful. However, when his body was bathing in the 7 Sun Realm Divine Spring, he didn't feel any poison in his body. His bone marrow, blood, meridians, muscles, skin, organs, and even his hair were all washed by the 7 Sun Realm Divine Spring. However, he didn't feel any poison in his body. This was strange. This situation is a little strange. If only I had an experienced expert by my side to give me advice. Xia Pingan touched his face and muttered to himself. However, just as he said this, Xia Pingan suddenly thought of something. His eyes lit up and he clapped his hands. Elder Mu! How could I forget about Elder Mu? Elder Mu was in the Spirit Husbandry Fortress. He had lived for many years. Xia Pingan hadn't returned to the Spirit Husbandry Fortress ever since he entered the 10,000 God Planet. Now was a good time to go to the Spirit Husbandry Fortress and ask Elder Mu if there was a way to get rid of the 10,000 God Sex poison. Xia Pingan acted immediately. After making up his mind, he sat cross-legged on Xuanwu's back and closed his eyes. In an instant, he arrived at the Spirit World God Palace. Through the portal in the Spirit World God Palace, he directly returned to the Spirit World Fortress on Earth. Your Majesty, you're back. Just as Xia Pingan appeared in the square of the Spirit Husbandry Fortress, Elder Mu's figure appeared in front of him. He looked at Xia Pingan with a surprised expression. Ah, Your Majesty, how did you get poisoned by the spirit body? Without Elder Mu's reminder, Xiao Pingan had already noticed it. This was because when he appeared in the spirit world, he saw a snake-shaped black fog coiling around his body. The snake-shaped black fog coiled around his body from his thigh all the way to his neck. It was very obvious. Xiao Pingan was only surprised for a second before he reacted instantly. Damn, could it be that the poison in the 10,000 gods sex poison is not in the physical body, but in the spirit body? This poison can only be detected when I enter the spirit world? The poison in your Majesty's spirit body shouldn't have been in your Majesty's spirit body for too long. This poison isn't very strong. It's just a low-level stuff. As long as it's not triggered, it will dissipate on its own in about 70 years. Elder Mu didn't seem to notice the interesting expression on Xiao Pingan's face. He spoke to himself, then stretched out a skinny hand. With a thought, the snake-shaped black fog coiling around Xiao Pingan's spirit body was sucked into Elder Mu's hand. Elder Mu then kneaded it into a black pill. Your Majesty has already advanced to a high-level spirit husbandry and has mastered the spirit husbandry's spirit creation technique. To remove the poison in this low-level spirit body, your Majesty only needs to enter the spirit world and use the spirit creation technique to collect the poison. After saying this, Elder Mu saw that Xiao Pingan was looking at him with surprise and joy. An unconcealable smile had already appeared on Xiao Pingan's face. Chapter 595. What a pleasant surprise. Xiao Pingan did not expect that the poison that had troubled him in the Wanshin sect would be cured so easily. Of course, it was easy for him. If it was someone else, as long as that person did not have the ability to enter the spiritual realm, or if they did not have the ability to create objects with their thoughts after entering, it would be impossible for them to cure the poison of the spiritual body. Xiao Pingan took the black poison pill from Elder Mu's hand. With a thought, the black poison pill turned into a black smoke again and coiled around his body like a snake. With another thought, the black smoke condensed into the shape of a pill again and appeared in his hand. Everything was so easy. With another thought, Xiao Pingan created a snow-white porcelain bottle out of thin air in his hand. He put the pill into the porcelain bottle, then closed the bottle and handed it to Elder Mu. He sighed. I didn't expect there to be such a strange poison in the world. Elder Mu, please keep this for me. I may need it in the future. Creating objects with one's thoughts was a skill mastered by high-ranking spirit herders. After Xiao Pingan became a high-ranking spirit herder in the spiritual realm, he had mastered this skill after returning to the spiritual husbandry fortress. This skill was very simple. As long as one had enough soul power, they could create anything in the spiritual realm with their thoughts, just like creating dreams. May I know what this poison is made of? Xiao Pingan asked Elder Mu another question. This poison is made from the roots of the two-realm grass and the seven emotions flower. When the two-realm grass is mixed with the roots of the seven emotions flower, the poison will seep into the spiritual body through the physical body. Once the poison fuses with the spiritual body, as long as the poisoned person smells or touches the fragrance of the seven emotions flower, the poison will be triggered. The two-realm grass and the seven emotions flower should be rare items, right? They are indeed rare items. These two items can only grow in special void secret realms. Moreover, the environment they grow in is very strict. Just the fragrance of a seven emotions flower can spread tens of thousands of miles away and induce the poison. Duan Ling Tian said. So far? Xiao Pingan asked in surprise. Elder Mu nodded. Your Majesty, it's like dripping a drop of blood into a pond. No matter how small the drop of blood is, no matter how much water there is in the pond, a bowl of pond water contains 1/1,000,000,000th of Your Majesty's blood. Some spiritual beasts could identify it with their noses. The fragrance of the seven emotions flower is the same. When the fragrance spreads into the air, it could spread in all directions and possibly affect those poisoned by the spiritual body within 10,000 miles. Xiao Pingan let out a long sigh. Thank you, Elder Mu. I understand. After hearing Elder Mu's explanation, Xiao Pingan finally understood how the 10,000 deities sect operated. It was really an eye-opener for him. If those poison returned to the god-slaying insect realm before being detoxified, unless they wrapped themselves in a vacuum environment and didn't breathe, the spiritual body poison would be triggered as soon as they came into contact with the air of the god-slaying insect realm. This was because the fragrance of the seven emotions flower had been accumulated in the air of the god-slaying insect realm for many years. I can see that your Majesty's spiritual body has changed since you left the spirit husbandry stronghold. It has become stronger. Your Majesty should have reached the seven sun realm. How did your Majesty get poisoned by this spiritual body? It's a long story. If I wasn't poisoned, I wouldn't have been able to bathe in the seven suns realm's divine spring. This advancement might have been delayed for a long time. With the threat to his body removed, Xia Pingan's burden was lifted. Xia Pingan felt relaxed. All right, I'll go back first. I came to the spiritual realm this time to ask Elder Mu about the detoxification. Now that the poison has been removed, it's fine. My physical body is hidden in a place, and I can't leave it for too long. Seeing Xia Pingan about to leave, Elder Mu was a little helpless. He could only say, "Your Majesty, you've already mastered the art of creating objects with your mind. Don't forget to build a starry sky mirror for yourself in the spiritual realm. This is a necessary step for a high-level spirit husbandry to advance to a spirit husbandry. The starry sky mirror can allow your Majesty to open up your own territory in the spiritual realm." All right, I understand. When I have time, I'll return to the spiritual realm to build the starry sky mirror. After Xia Pingan finished speaking, he waved at Elder Mu. Then, he walked briskly and left through the golden arch door of the fortress. Seeing this, Elder Mu could only shake his head and smile bitterly. In a cave in the rock layer tens of thousands of meters deep in the Thousand Birds Plain, Xia Pingan opened his eyes. A relaxed smile appeared on his face as he exhaled deeply. It felt so good to not have my life in the hands of others. He had advanced to the Seven Suns realm and removed the poison in his spirit body. If the 10,000 gods sect knew that their Seven Suns realm divine spring had been given to him, they would probably vomit blood. Ha ha ha. But then again, he had joined the 10,000 gods sect several times. He had made some contributions to the 10,000 gods sect. It wasn't a loss for the 10,000 gods sect to provide him with a Seven Suns realm divine spring. The environment here is quiet, and I won't be disturbed. I'll prepare some life-saving items for myself here before going out. As he spoke, Xia Pingan had already taken out a bronze-colored disc array and began to study it. If he stayed alone for too long, Xia Pingan was afraid that he would get sick if he didn't talk to himself. Previously, Xia Pingan had killed 2 winged flaming worms and a few Mantis blade insects. In addition to the insect crystals, these insects had also provided Xia Pingan with 3 realm pearls. However, among the 3 realm pearls, one was the Shinnong realm pearl, one was the Yangshe realm pearl, and one was the 3-faced realm pearl. Xia Pingan had merged with these 3 realm pearls before, so they were useless to him. He could only keep them as collectibles. The disc array in Xia Pingan's hand was the disc array that Lu Yiqian had used to protect himself. This disc array was a chain array. Its concept was extremely exquisite, and its power was very strong. This disc array was divided into 2 layers. The outer layer was the fire and ice maze array, which was excellent for attacking, defending, and confusing the enemy. The inner layer was the 8-gate golden lock array, which was as stable as an iron mountain. It could reverse the life and death gates and reverse the 7 extremes. Once trapped, it would be very difficult to escape. Even a Seven Suns realm expert would find it difficult to escape in a short time. Xia Pingan had already refined the array discs and puppets several times before. He already had a lot of experience in the refining method of the array discs. He also had a new understanding of the Kunlun array mechanism collection. He was no longer a newbie. At this moment, Xia Pingan was holding the disc array that he had obtained from Lu Yiqian. His hands moved magically as he formed seals one after another. Lu Yiqian's disc array was turned into a large pile of components in just a moment under Xia Pingan's hands. Although the disc array was not big when he held it in his hand, once it was restored to the most basic disc array components using a secret technique, those components piled up in front of Xiaopingan. It was at least 1 to 2 cubic meters, which was half a room's worth. Array billets, array tools, array bases, array eyes, array doors, and so on are all broken down by Xiaopingan and put away in different categories. If other array masters were here to see Xiaopingan dismantling the disc array, they would probably be surprised and in admiration. This was because, in the eyes of array masters who could understand the mechanisms of the disc array and casually dismantle other people's disc array were all experts among array masters. Ordinary array masters, even if they could refine disc arrays themselves, did not have the ability to casually dismantle other array masters' disc arrays. Dismantling the disc array was a high-level skill among array masters, and it was a sharp tool for assembly. The array master who made this disc array is not very good. The components of this disc array are actually so big. Xiaopingan shook his head as he examined the disc array components in front of him with sharp and professional eyes. When a powerful array master made a disc array, he could either make the disc array larger and larger, and even use the rivers, lakes, seas, the sun, the moon, and the stars as array eyes, or make it smaller and smaller, but the power would not be reduced. The components used to refine the disc array must be delicate and concise. Redundancy and complexity were the most taboo. Most array tools were expensive. In Xiaopingan's eyes, the array master who made so many components after dismantling the disc array was really not a top-notch character. Xiaopingan began to study the components of the disc array in front of him one by one. The most important thing about the disc array was how to completely fuse the two different array bases and array eyes together, and how to make them interlock and only reinforce each other. 2 days later, Xiaopingan had already gained some insights. He tried to follow the idea of the disc array and began to imitate an identical disc array. It took 7 days to imitate this disc array. When this disc array was imitated, all the components were exactly the same. At most, only the materials were slightly different. After imitating the first disc array, Xiaopingan's spirit was greatly aroused. His interest was aroused, and he began to create a second disc array that had the same effect according to his own ideas. 7 or 8 days later, the second disc array was created, and the size of the components in the disc array was reduced by a quarter. Xiaopingan began to imitate the third disc array. When the third disc array was created, the size of the disc array was reduced by a fifth again. After imitating 3 disc arrays in a row, Xiaopingan found that he was already very knowledgeable about 2 disc arrays. Then, he began to refine his first disc array. Xiaopingan's idea of the disc array was simple and crude. It pursued the continuous superposition of a single effect. Since the purpose of this disc array was to trap people and save his own life, then Xiaopingan would superimpose an array base that could trap people in the disc array. The outer layer of the disc array was the 8-gate tortoiseshell 5 elements reversal maze formation, and the inner layer was the 8-gate tortoiseshell 5 elements reversal maze formation. When the 2 disc arrays were locked together, the 5 elements would be reversed twice, the door of life and death would change twice, and the tortoiseshell Iron Mountain would be covered with another layer of tortoiseshell Iron Mountain, and it would have the effect of reversing the maze. Although it did not have a strong attack power, it might be able to trap people to death inside. It would definitely not be easy to break out of the array with brute force. Xiaopingan refined a total of 10 of these 8-gate tortoiseshell 5 elements reversal maze formation in one go. Then, Xiaopingan refined a large pile of thunder talismans for himself. He hid underground and did not ask about the passage of time outside. After all, the divine power in his body automatically recovered 4 times. Only then would Xiaopingan be able to prepare all the life-saving items for himself. Chapter 596. When Xiaopingan saw Jinlan City again, Jinlan City had already turned into ruins. The bustling city a few months ago now looked like a pile of broken porcelain shards that had been dug out from the ashes of an old brick kiln. The bustling crowd in the city was gone. Large swathes of tall buildings had been reduced to ruins. The few buildings that had not collapsed were emaciated. Exposed and distorted steel structures were everywhere. The entire building stood in the city like a broken skeleton. There were traces of smoke and fire everywhere. The streets were filled with the ruins of buildings. In the ruins of the buildings, one could vaguely see human skeletons. There was not a single intact building in the entire city. A few stray dogs were searching for food in the smoke-filled city. The entire city's ground and damaged buildings were filled with huge craters. The rusted wreckage of armored vehicles and the shattered shells of mantis blade bugs were intertwined together. In the southeast of the city, there was a huge crater that was more than 100 meters in diameter. The buildings around the crater were all reduced to ashes. It was unknown what kind of weapon had created such a terrifying crater. The cruelty of the war between species was on full display at this moment. Cities and towns were destroyed. Farmlands were barren. Factories were reduced to ruins. Now, the entire myriad god planet was filled with refugees. On the way here, Xiao Pingon saw many refugees on the ground. He also saw many soldiers and mantis blade bugs. He saw many battles between both sides. He even saw a few summoners appear on the battlefield. Xiao Pingon had learned his lesson this time. Apart from killing a few mantis blade bugs and winged flaming bugs along the way in the wilderness, Xiao Pingon had been keeping a low profile all the way from the Thousand Birds Plain. Apart from using the illusion technique to fly in stealth mode, he would occasionally burrow into the ground and change his whereabouts. Child of Fortune would sit on his shoulder at all times to keep an eye on his surroundings and listen to his surroundings. He would try his best to avoid a place as lively as the battlefield and not blindly get involved. This was because Xiao Pingon did not know how many primordial remnant race members were drooling with bloodshot eyes on Myriad God Planet. They were secretly watching the summoner that had arrived. He was just passing by Jinlan's city. Xiao Pingon wanted to take a look at the Wan Shun Sect's contact point. The coordinates of the Wan Shun Sect's contact point had been placed beside the Seven Sun Realm's divine spring. Xiao Pingon went to the 10,000 God Sect's contact point for two reasons. Firstly, he could understand the current situation on 10,000 Gods planet and see if there was any useful information. Secondly, Xiao Pingon wanted to accept a mission from the 10,000 God Sect to return the favor of the Seven Sun Realm divine spring. Although Xiao Pingon had already removed the spiritual poison left in his body by the Myriad God Sect and could leave the Myriad God Planet at any time, Xiao Pingon still felt a little apologetic. He and the controllers of the Myriad God Sect were all space traversers. They were a group of summoners who wanted to save their home from the invasion of space. It could be said that they shared the same fate and appreciated each other. If he were to use someone else's divine spring and leave without doing anything for them, it would seem a little unkind. Therefore, Xiao Pingon wanted to go to the Myriad God Sect's contact point to take a look. The contact point was on a mountain more than 2,000 kilometers east of Jinlan City. From a three-dimensional map in Xiao Pingon's mind, the contact point was on the peak of a relatively famous snowy mountain. There were very few people around it. As for the specific situation, he would only know when he got there. After leaving Jinlan City, Xiao Pingon did not waste any time and continued flying while invisible. After flying for 3 hours, a towering mountain range appeared in front of Xiao Pingon's eyes. Xiao Pingon used the Earth Escape technique from the sky. After another 20 minutes, Xiao Pingon emerged from the ground. The mountainside was shrouded in clouds and mist. At the top of the mountain, there was a snowy mountain. It was already in front of Xiao Pingon. From the altitude, the snowy mountain was more than 10,000 meters above sea level. And this was not even the highest mountain on the Myriad God Planet. There were no cities or villages around the snowy mountains. The surrounding mountains were bare stones with very little vegetation, especially above the snow line. The melted snow rushed into the mountains, creating icy gullies full of cobblestones. It was very difficult for ordinary people to survive here, so there were very few people here. Xiao Pingon hid at the foot of the mountain and did not rashly ascend it. Instead, he summoned Child of Fortune and got him to fly to the top of the mountain to take a look at the coordinates. Child of Fortune was unafraid of the cold and heat. In a few flashes, he arrived at the top of the snowy mountain. The top of the snowy mountain was bare. Other than the whistling wind and the snowflakes in the wind, there was nothing else. Along the way, he saw a few corpses left behind by mountain enthusiasts. They were completely frozen. These corpses had been left here for many years. For ordinary people, trying to reach the top of such a snowy mountain might cost them their lives. Wait, there's something else. Child of Fortune's perception was very sharp. After circling the top of the mountain, Child of Fortune discovered something abnormal. There was a snow-white snow eagle standing in a pile of snow more than 2,000 meters away from the top of the mountain. Its eyes were wide open. The snow eagle was white and covered in snow. It was motionless on another mountain more than 2,000 meters away. Even Xiao Pingon found it difficult to notice it. That snow eagle was strange. It was a summoned beast. Except for that snow eagle, there were no traces of the Zerg, summoners, or ancient races in the vicinity of the snowy mountain at the coordinates. After thinking for a while, Xiao Pingon directly used illusion to hide himself and flew to the top of the snow-capped peak. He pretended to look around blankly and groped around the peak. When Xiao Pingon flew to the top of the mountain, the snow eagle buried in the pile of snow suddenly flapped its wings and flew rapidly towards him. In 1 or 2 minutes, it had reached the top of the snowy mountain. After circling 3 times above Xiao Pingon's head, it let out a clear cry and flew towards a valley below the snowy mountain. Xiao Pingon flew behind the snow eagle. The snow eagle shuttled through the mountain ridge. After flying for about 70 or 80 kilometers, it landed on the roof of a small wooden house built halfway up the mountain and stopped moving. A sturdy man wearing a thick bearskin coat, a round face, a big beard, and a wolfskin hat walked out of the small wooden house. He squinted his eyes and looked at Xiao Pingon, who had landed. He grinned and said, "Not bad. It seems that you've already fused with the ethereal realm's immortal spring and advanced to the ethereal realm. Let's talk inside." After saying that, he turned around and entered the small wooden house, ignoring Xiao Pingon. Xiao Pingon had thought that the 10,000 God sect's contact point would be a high and mighty place like an underground base. He did not expect that the so-called contact point of the 10,000 God sect was actually a small wooden house in such a remote mountain. The man just now had the vague aura of a summoner, but he was dressed like a hunter who lived in seclusion in the mountains. Xiao Pingon did not hesitate and directly entered the small wooden house. There was a fire pit on the ground of the small wooden house. The fire pit was burning, which made the small wooden house very warm. There was a metal shelf above the fire pit, on which there was a copper kettle. There was goat's milk in the copper kettle. Beside the fire pit, there were several corns that had been roasted until they were golden and fragrant. That man was warming himself by the fire while breaking a corn in his hand and throwing it into his mouth. "I'm the person in charge of this contact point of the 10,000 God sect. I'm a red-robed deacon of the 10,000 God sect. You can cook whatever you want to eat. I won't stand on ceremony with you." That man said straightforwardly. Xiao Pingon did not stand on ceremony. He sat beside the fire pit and picked up a roasted corn. After tearing off the leaves and corns, he started to eat. Xiao Pingon had not eaten roasted corns for a long time. He had almost forgotten what they tasted like. During these days in the underground world, he had eaten fasting pills the most. The soft, fragrant, and crispy corns had a unique taste after being roasted. As he ate the corns, Xiao Pingon poured himself a cup of goat's milk. "You sure have guts." The man chuckled. "People who come here often wonder if the goat's milk and corns have been poisoned. There's nothing to worry about. Since we've come to the myriad gods planet, we aren't afraid of death. If we're afraid of death, we wouldn't have come." Xiao Pingon said, "Well said. It's just that your luck isn't too good. I don't have many missions on hand. The easier missions have been taken by others. The slightly harder missions have also been taken by others. I haven't received the next batch of missions that can be issued. I might have to wait a few more months." As the man spoke, he took out a small wine bottle and took a sip. Let me ask you something. What's the situation on the myriad gods planet? I've been in seclusion for a few months, so I've been cut off from the news. No wonder. The man nodded. I find you pleasing to the eye, so I'll tell you the truth. The situation on the myriad gods planet is even more chaotic than it was a few months ago. The Federation's government is completely paralyzed and can't be relied on. The military leaders of the various administrative districts and the generals of the armed forces are in control, but they are not unified. The activities of the Zergs and the primordial remnant races are becoming more frequent. It's like a pot of porridge. The various factions and summoners from the god-slaying bug world are swarming to the myriad gods planet. This is both a good and bad thing for us. Xiao Pingon was slightly taken aback as he stopped eating the corns. Why would the factions and summoners from the god-slaying bug world swarm to the myriad gods planet? It looks like you really don't know. The man shook his head. The myriad gods planet is currently being devoured by the god-slaying bug world. It's in a special spatial state of the god-slaying bug world. 2 months ago, a summoner who accidentally entered the myriad gods planet discovered a hidden void mystic realm in the void near the myriad gods planet. That void mystic realm contains the ruins of a fallen god's divine kingdom. It said that the summoner obtained divine treasures in that void mystic realm and even dug out 2 spiritual perception crystal veins. This news spread to the god-slaying bug world. So many factions and summoners from the god-slaying bug world have come. Chapter 597. This world was like a rolling wheel that would never stop for anyone. While he was cultivating in seclusion in the depths of the underground to accumulate life-saving means, someone had discovered the divine treasures in the void secret realm and even dug out the load of divine thought crystals. The world was just that unfair. Everyone had their own opportunities. With such thoughts in mind, Xiao Pingon's expression was one of undisguised envy. He felt as though he had missed out on hundreds of millions. I never expected that the space where the god-slaying bugs devoured myriad god planet would have a void mystic realm that hid the divine treasury. The so-called divine treasury was the place that true Lord Styx River had brought Xiao Pingon to in the depths of the undying sea. It was the divine treasury. There were countless treasures in the divine treasury. To cultivators, it could be dangerous, but it could also be a great opportunity. The myriad god sect did not expect it either. If they had known about it earlier, the divine treasury would not have landed in the hands of others. The man beside Xiao Pingon said with some regret. However, with so many summoners and factions entering myriad god planet, it should reduce the pressure on the myriad god sect, right? Xiao Pingon said casually. Yes, the Zerg race and the primordial remnant races are a threat to most people. With so many people entering, the human race's strength on myriad god planet will increase. This is a good thing, but the myriad god sect control over myriad god planet will also weaken. Many of their plans will be disrupted, so this is both a good thing and a bad thing. Just last month, a sacrificial warrior who entered the myriad god sect was followed and had his divine spring stolen. As the man spoke, he casually threw a piece of firewood into the fire pit. This is the situation on myriad god planet. If you want to try your luck at a place with a divine treasury, you can go to the south pole of myriad god planet. There are many summoners gathered there. The divine treasury will depend on fate. Xiao Pingon shook his head. I'm here to ask if there's any special mission that will allow me to obtain the antidote to the poison in my body after completing it. It will allow me to fulfill my agreement with the myriad god sect and allow me to leave myriad god planet immediately without being affected. You want to get rid of all the poison in your body with just one mission? The man frowned slightly and confirmed. 1 is fine, 2 is fine too, but not too many. If we grind it down bit by bit, each mission will take 3 to 5 years off. That's not interesting. I might not have the patience and time for that. It's best if we can finish it in one go. Xiao Pingon said in a deep voice. Are you trying to exchange a mission for the 10,000 God Sect's Nether Passage Realm Divine Spring? Xiao Pingon nodded. Something like that. stroking his fluffy beard. That man glanced at Xia Pingan as if he was looking at a monster. After pondering for a short while, he said, "There are such missions, but they're almost impossible to survive or require you to pay a great price that ordinary people can't afford. Most people would avoid them like the plague. Are you sure you want to take such a mission? Tell me about it." Xia Pingan said calmly, "I happen to have a sect mission here. As long as you accept this sect mission, the 10,000 Gods sect will give you the complete antidote. Once the mission is completed, you can leave the 10,000 Gods planet at any time and regain your freedom. There is no risk of death in this mission." Xia Pingan looked at the man in front of him suspiciously, thinking that this man was joking with him. If there really was such a mission, there was no risk of death, and he could leave the 10,000 Gods planet after completing it. This meant that this mission was only worth one 7-sun realm divine spring. How could no one accept such a mission and leave it to him? The man seemed to know what Xia Pingan was thinking. He said unhurriedly, "The reason why no one has accepted this mission before is because although this mission doesn't require one's life, it's equivalent to taking one's life for a Nether Passage realm summoner. What mission is so strange? Do you know about soul tools?" Xia Pingan almost laughed. The man in front of him was actually asking a high-level spirit shepherd, a master of soul power, if he knew about soul tools. "Huh." Xia Pingan nodded with a serious expression. "Of course I know about them. Soul tools require soul power to refine. Soul power is the most important treasure of a summoner's body. Once a summoner loses his soul power, he will be like an ordinary person suffering from severe anemia and malnutrition. Not only will his body's blood and spirit be greatly affected, his cultivation will also drop, making it difficult for him to fuse with the realm pearl. Most importantly, a summoner without enough soul power will not have the opportunity to comprehend the mysteries of a domain, even if they advance to the 8th-sun realm in the future. They will not be able to use a domain." "That's right, that's true." Xia Pingan nodded. "But what does soul power have to do with this mission?" Of course it does. If you are willing to let someone extract enough soul power from your body to refine 10 ordinary soul tools, you can accept this mission." Xia Pingan was stunned. How could there be such a strange mission? The man looked at Xia Pingan and thought that Xia Pingan was scared stiff. His tone immediately became serious. "I'll say the ugly words first. The amount of soul force extracted from your body is enough to craft 10 normal soul armaments. It won't take your life. This amount of soul force is a huge number even for a 7-sun realm summoner. It's at least 80% of their total soul force. You should know what this means." Xia Pingan nodded solemnly. "You mean to say that this mission requires a 7-sun realm summoner to willingly contribute his soul power?" "Yes. If a summoner loses less than 20% of his soul power, he can gradually recover 70 to 80% by slowly eating various pills and treasures to replenish his soul power. However, if a summoner loses more than 50% of his soul power, it will be difficult to recover the lost soul power no matter how many pills and treasures he eats. At most, he will only be able to recover 10 to 20%. This will cause permanent damage to his cultivation and body. It might even cause him to lose the opportunity to grasp a domain in the future. Do you still want to accept such a mission?" An ordinary soul tool would consume at least 0.5 slashes of soul power, and at most 1.2 slashes of soul power. Soul tools that consumed 2 slashes of soul power were considered high quality. On average, an ordinary soul tool would require about 0.85 slashes of soul power. Refining 10 ordinary soul tools would require about 10 slashes of soul power. An ordinary 7-sun realm summoner would have about 11 or 12 slashes of soul power in his body. Therefore, extracting about 10 slashes of soul power from an ordinary 7-sun realm summoner was indeed unbearable for an ordinary summoner. It was almost equivalent to taking away half of a normal summoner's life. It would cause permanent damage to his body and cultivation. However, this request was simply a joke to him. The soul power in his body was endless. After becoming a high-level spirit master, The soul power in his body had already reached the stage of self-generation. Not to mention 10 slashes of soul power. Even 100 slashes of soul power in one go was nothing to him. This mission was equivalent to plucking a hair from his body. Would he be able to return the favor to the 10,000 deities sect? How could there be such a good thing in this world? Xiao Pingan's stomach was already blooming with joy, but his expression became more and more serious. His 2 eyebrows were knitted, his pair of triangular eyes squinted, and a layer of dark clouds quietly crept up his long horse face. He seemed to be especially cautious and careful. Can I ask, why is there such a mission? If someone needs soul power, can't they just find a few people and extract a bit of soul power from each of them? The soul power extracted from different people comes from different sources. It's a little mixed. The soul power required by this mission can only come from one person, and the person who contributes soul power must be willing. Xiao Pingan asked tentatively, "Is it needed by the 10,000 deities sect?" "I don't know about that. I'm just following orders to release this mission. I only know a small part of the details of this mission." The specific content and details of this mission can only be known by those who participate in the mission. Can you let me think about it? Xiao Pingan was afraid that he would make the other party suspicious if he agreed too quickly, so he deliberately hesitated. "Yes, within the next 3 months, you can come here to find me when you've thought about it." "Thank you." After saying this, Xiao Pingan took his leave. Xiao Pingan walked out of the small wooden house and used illusion to hide himself. In the blink of an eye, he rose into the air and disappeared into the valley. The man looked at Xiao Pingan, who left, shook his head, and muttered to himself, "This kind of mission, probably no one will accept it. Those who asked before were all scared away." Chapter 598. After leaving the small wooden house, Xiao Pingan flew in the air for more than an hour. He didn't run too far and found a place to land in the mountain range. Then he burrowed underground and found a bubble-like karst cave tens of thousands of meters deep. He took out a formation plate to protect it and then settled down here. Just now in the small wooden house, Xiao Pingan was afraid that he would arouse suspicion if he agreed too quickly, so he found an excuse to delay it. Extracting more than 80% of his soul power would have a huge impact on his future cultivation. The advantage was that he could immediately obtain the antidote and regain his freedom. This was a difficult choice for any ordinary summoner, so he had to be careful. Of course, this was only what the 10,000 gods sect said on the surface. It was hard to confirm whether there was any other motive behind it. They are willing to pay the 7-sun tier divine spring in exchange for the soul power in one person's body. The soul power can't be mixed, and it can't be pieced together by a few people. It has to be done willingly, and it needs to be around the 10th severance. What exactly is this for? The dream demon knows that I can enter the spiritual realm. For people who can enter the spiritual realm, this bit of soul power is nothing. Could this be a trap to find me? Xiao Pingan sat cross-legged on a stone platform in a karst cave. He gently stroked the stubble on his chin and fell into deep thought. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Pingan's eyes suddenly lit up as he thought of a possibility. Could it be? Xiao Pingan suddenly remembered that there seemed to be such a piece of information in the secret method of refining soul tools that he grasped. Saint tools refined by demigod elites with their own soul power had terrifying power. Generally speaking, such saint tools were nurtured by demigod elites in their own consciousness. The saint tools could be integrated with the body. Saint tools were almost the strongest weapons that summoners below the god tier could use. As for god tools, they were exclusive to the god tier. Even demigods couldn't completely control them. However, there was also a special situation, and that was when a demigod used their soul force to refine a saint artifact. If the saint artifact still existed after the demigod died and was obtained by a summoner below the demigod realm, they would need to use soul force of at least the 7-sun realm to nurture the saint artifact in order to maintain its terrifying power. Furthermore, the source of soul force used to nurture the saint artifact couldn't be too impure. It had to be voluntary. If the summoner who provided the soul power was not willing to do so, then the soul power drawn out would carry the summoner's heavy negative emotions. It would not be able to be used to nurture the holy artifact and would instead damage the holy artifact's power. The requirements of this mission issued by the 10,000 Deities sect were too similar to the requirements of nurturing a sacred artifact. Could it be that the 10,000 Deities sect was looking for someone who was willing to provide soul power to nurture a sacred artifact? Very likely. As for whether this mission was a trap, after careful analysis, Xiao felt that the possibility of this mission being a trap was not high. Firstly, the 10,000 Deities sect and the Blood Demon Church were enemies of the demon god Juggernaut. The possibility of the 10,000 Deities sect and the Blood Demon Church working together was very low. Secondly, this mission was targeted at the Death Warriors who came to the 10,000 Deities planet to risk their lives. How would the 10,000 Deities sect know that he would come to the 10,000 Deities planet for the Seven Sun Realm Divine Spring? The worst-case scenario was that one of the big shots in the 10,000 Deities sect wanted to work together with the Blood Demon Church to set this trap. Then, this created a paradox. The Dream Demon knew that he had the ability to enter and exit the spiritual realm, and the poison that the 10,000 Deities sect used on people was a spiritual body poison. Therefore, if he really came to the 10,000 Deities planet and needed to remove the spiritual body poison, he would first think of a solution from the spiritual realm. Furthermore, the spiritual body poison was completely useless against spirit herders. Why would he be willing to sell his soul power and expose his identity for a poison that could not threaten him? The premise of this trap and the trap itself were contradictory. Therefore, the possibility of the first trap was very high. After understanding this, Xiao was no longer in a hurry. Now that he had time, he could use it to increase his strength. He smiled slightly and moved his hand. He took out a realm pearl that was flashing with 4 colors: red, yellow, blue, and black. Within the realm pearl, there were 4 words in Xiaozhuan: Chariot of Sinan. This realm pearl had dropped from a winged flaming bug that Xiao had killed on the way to the contact point. The other winged flaming bugs and mantis blade bugs had also dropped realm pearls. However, Xiao had fused with them before. This realm pearl was the only one that Xiao had not fused with. As he advanced to the Seven Sun Realm and fused with more realm pearls, he would encounter fewer rare realm pearls that he could fuse with. This was the first realm pearl that Xiao had obtained after killing a bunch of bugs on the 10,000 Deities planet that he could fuse with. The Chariot of Sinan, also known as the South-Pointing Chariot, was a vehicle that was equipped with a compass in ancient China. In ancient China, compasses were important tools for long-distance travel. They were specially placed on the chariot and guarded by specialized personnel. Legend had it that the South-Pointing Chariot was first invented during the battle between the Yellow Emperor and Qi Yu. There were 3 theories as to who invented it. The first was the Yellow Emperor, the second was the Mystic Lady, and the third was the Empress of Wind. Later on, during the 3 Kingdoms period, Ma Jun created the South-Pointing Chariot according to historical records. This was one of the 4 great inventions of China. Xiao was really looking forward to it. However, he did not know what role this realm pearl would play. After dripping a drop of blood on the realm pearl, Xiao was enveloped by a cocoon of light in a moment. Xiao opened his eyes and realized that he was standing in a magnificent hall. Sitting in the hall was a young emperor in his 30s. He was wearing an emperor's crown and dragon robes. The civil and military officials were lined up on both sides of the hall. As for Xiao he was standing at the back of the civil officials. He did not stand out. A voice reverberated in the hall. "Your Majesty, it is said that there was a south-pointing chariot in ancient times. It was built by the Yellow Emperor. However, there are insufficient documents, and it is not reliable. It is just a rumor. There's a south-pointing chariot, and it is easy to build it. I have it in my residence. However, the south-pointing chariot is absolutely false." Based on Xiao rich historical knowledge, he immediately knew the man's identity as soon as he spoke. He was Gao Tanglong, the general of the Wei Kingdom during the Three Kingdoms period. The young emperor, sitting at the head of the hall, should be Emperor Mingdi of Wei. Needless to say, his current identity was Ma Jun, the wood sage and inventor of the Three Kingdoms period. His current identity was that of the Wei Kingdom's imperial censor, which was why he could attend court. As soon as Gao Tonglong's voice fell, another person stood up and said, "Lord Gao is right. There are too many illusory things in the ancient legends. The idea of a compass chariot is not very credible. Confucius also doesn't believe in things that happened more than 3 generations ago. Although Gue Guzi and other books also mention the existence of a compass chariot, I'm afraid it's just a matter of parroting." Xiao Pinggan looked at the person who spoke. This person was wearing armor and looked valiant. He looked extremely conceited. He should be the valiant general of cavalry, Qin Lang. As soon as the two of them finished speaking, the civil and military officials in the hall began to discuss. Xiao Pinggan was also confused as to why the courtiers of the Wei Kingdom were suddenly discussing the south-pointing chariot in the main hall today. He didn't know who had started this topic, but it was obvious that Wei Mingdi, who was sitting on the throne, was very interested in this topic and listened to everyone's discussion with great interest. Suddenly, Emperor Mingdi's gaze fell on Xiao Pinggan, who had been silent all this time. He suddenly said, "Deheng, you have always studied these things deeply. I don't know what you think of the south-pointing chariot. The book said that the ancient Yellow Emperor had created the south-pointing chariot. Do you think this south-pointing chariot exists or not?" Xiao Pinggan stepped out of the ranks with an edict and bowed to Emperor Mingdi. He said, "Your Majesty, the theory of the south-pointing chariot is the same as that of the south-pointing chariot. It is just that the chariot uses the principle of mechanical transmission to transfer the magnetic force of the chariot to the wooden dummy on the chariot, making the wooden dummy point to the south. There is nothing special about it. It is just that the later generations did not study the principle seriously, so they said it was strange." Hearing this, Gao Tanglong sneered. Qin Lang and the ministers who had just said there was no south-pointing chariot also shook their heads. Emperor Mingdi suddenly became interested. "Deheng, can you make the south-pointing chariot? As long as your Majesty gives me a month, I can make the south-pointing chariot," Xiao Pinggan said in a deep voice. "Ha ha!" Emperor Mingdi laughed and looked around. "Then I will give you a month. If you can make the south-pointing chariot, I will give you a big reward. My dear ministers, let's stop arguing. Let's wait for a month and see what the south-pointing chariot Deheng makes for us looks like." Making the south-pointing chariot was not difficult for Xiao Pinggan. Moreover, he was now the minister of the Wei Kingdom, and he was in charge of many Wei Kingdom's craftsmen. As long as he put forward an idea and needed something, someone would quickly make it for him. After leaving the imperial palace, Xiao Pinggan returned to the government office and closed his door for 2 days to draw the blueprint. After drawing the blueprint, he gathered a group of craftsmen to start a trial. As a result, he finished the south-pointing chariot in less than half a month and brought it to the imperial palace. Emperor Mingdi and a group of ministers came to take a look. When they saw the wooden figurine on the south-pointing chariot made by Xiao Pinggan, no matter where the chariot went, the wooden figurine's hand was always pointing south. All of them gasped in admiration. The world of the realm pearl shattered. The upper limit of the divine power was increased by 48 points. The 4 great inventions of China were not stingy with their divine power. Xiao Pinggan guessed that the 48 points of divine power represented the meaning of all directions. After increasing the upper limit of the divine power by 48 points, the upper limit of the Xiao Pinggan secret mandala's divine power suddenly increased to 8,925 points. This realm pearl provided Xiao Pinggan with a spell to summon the south-pointing chariot. The south-pointing chariot could guide the summoner when he was lost. It was quite useful. After fusing with the realm pearl, Xiao Pinggan did not go anywhere for the remaining 2 days. He continued to study the array disc and runes underground. After 3 days, Xiao Pinggan left the underground. With a serious and determined expression, he went back to the contact point and found that person. He said that he was willing to accept the previous mission. Chapter 599. 10 days later, near Pantheon Planet's Antarctic Circle, Xiao was flying in the sky. The person flying with Xiao was a manager of the Pantheon sect. This manager's surname was Hu. After Xiao expressed his willingness to accept the mission, he had only stayed in the wooden hut for 2 days before manager Hu came and took Xiao away. The two of them rested and flew in the sky for several days. Today, they finally arrived near Pantheon Planet's Antarctic Circle. Manager Hu did things by the book and was very rigid. He did not speak a single word of nonsense along the way. When Xiao was with manager Hu, they probably did not speak more than 10 sentences a day. Pantheon Planet's Antarctic Circle was also an ice field. The east and south of the Antarctic Circle faced the sea. To the northwest was a large continent. Outside the Antarctic Circle, one could see a large patch of green. Near the Antarctic Circle, it became a large patch of tundra. Further south of the tundra was a white world of ice and snow. As the two of them flew in the sky, manager Hu cast an illusion to conceal their figures. Below the two of them was an endless, turbulent sea. On the sea, there were a few warships and a large maritime aircraft landing platform. A battle was taking place on the sea. The planes on the sea kept taking off and landing, bombarding a large number of zergs that had gathered on a large island hundreds of kilometers away. Winged flaming bugs flew in the sky, chasing after the fighter jets. From time to time, a winged flaming bug would be shot down to the sea by a fighter jet. There were also fighter jets that emitted smoke or flames, disintegrating in the air or falling into pieces on the sea. The human fighter jets were faster than the winged flaming bugs and had a longer attack range. However, the winged flaming bugs were more agile than the fighter jets. Furthermore, they could hover in the air. The battle between the two sides was very close. A fighter jet was caught by a winged flaming bug about 2,000 meters in front of Xiao. It was torn apart. The fighter jet disintegrated in the air and turned into a fireball. The pilot ejected and escaped. Seeing manager Hu turn a blind eye to it, as if he did not see it at all, and even planned to go around the airspace where the two sides were fighting, Xiao could not help but ask, "Manager Hu, do you need help?" "No need." Steward Tiger didn't say anything superfluous, and there was no expression on his face. "There's summoners coming from nearby. I brought you here to complete the sect's mission. Completing the sect's mission is the most important thing. Try not to be exposed as much as possible. Everything else is secondary." "All right, since your Wanshin sect isn't in a hurry, then I won't be in a hurry either." Xiao shrugged and didn't say anything. However, to be honest, the closer he got to the south pole of Pantheon Planet, the more high-level summoners Xiao encountered. Today, he had already encountered a few groups of them. These summoners were flying in the sky without any fear, completely ignoring the zergs and the army on Pantheon Planet. They were constantly shuttling through the huge crack in the sky, as if they were looking for something. The space in the sky seemed to belong to Pantheon Planet's atmosphere, but in fact it was connected to the god-slaying bug world. Looking up, the huge dark red spatial crack was completely open above Pantheon Planet's south pole. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the huge spatial crack, and black tornadoes and cyclones were wreaking havoc in the spatial crack. Manager Hu's judgment was right. Just as the pilot who had jumped out of the fighter jet was about to die under the jaws of the winged flaming bug, a snow-white ice dragon appeared in the sky and instantly entangled the winged flaming bug. The winged flaming bug's wings froze, turning it into a huge lump of ice that fell from the sky. Sure enough, there were summoners coming to join in the fun. The situation on Pantheon Planet was a complete mess. Various races and people from various factions were all present. It was as if they were rushing for their last dinner before the planet was devoured and destroyed. Xiao and manager, who had just flown less than 10 kilometers when a strong beam of light flashed on the island a few hundred kilometers away. A huge fireball and mushroom cloud rose from the island and could be seen from hundreds of kilometers away. Countless zergs on the island were reduced to ashes at that moment. Tactical nuclear bomb. Xiao Pingon was shocked. This was the only weapon the army on Pantheon Planet had that could threaten high-level summoners. The laws of physics on Pantheon Planet had yet to change, but with the devouring of space, it might not take many years for the weapons on this planet to become a memory. Manager, who only glanced at the spot where the light rose, as if he was used to it. He continued flying forward with Xiao Pingon. 2 hours later, the two of them had entered the sky above the South Pole's icy plains. When they flew hundreds of thousands of meters above a huge iceberg, Manager, who suddenly stopped with the spatial rift, with lightning flashing and thunder rumbling above them. Manager, who long time no see. A voice sounded in Xiao Pingon's ears. Xiao Pingon looked in the direction of the voice and saw an old granny with a head full of silver hair flying out from the black fog of the spatial rift above them. She flew directly towards the two of them. Judging from the old granny's aura, she was also at the 8th Sun realm. The moment she flew over, Manager, who removed the illusion on him and Xiao Pingon. In front of a high-level summoner, the so-called illusion would be completely useless once it reached a certain distance. Guardian Yin. Manager, who nodded at the old granny who flew over and then pointed at Xiao Pingon. It's him. That old granny flew in front of the two and used a pair of radiant eyes to size up Xiao Pingon from head to toe. She slowly nodded her head. Looks pretty good, pretty spirited. You can clearly explain the situation to him. This matter has to be voluntary. Extracting soul power is not child's play. Don't go back on your word when the time comes and cause trouble. I've already made it clear. He's doing it willingly. Manager, who nodded and then looked at Xiao Pingon. Follow Guardian Yin. Guardian Yin will give you the antidote. After Manager, who finished speaking, he did not say anything else. He simply turned around and flew away. Xiao Pingon felt that Manager, who was like a delivery man whose purpose was to send him here and be done with it. Come with me. The old granny glanced at Xiao Pingon and waved her hand. A cloud of black fog enveloped the two of them. The old granny directly brought Xiao Pingon and flew toward the spatial rift that was surrounded by lightning. They were as fast as lightning, and in just a moment, they had completely flown into the rift. Xiao Pingon was surrounded by dark red or dark black rolling clouds. Bolts of lightning pierced through Xiao Pingon's body. This huge space crack was like the abyss of hell in the sky. It was frightening. After flying for about half an hour, the two of them had already gone deep into the spatial rift. The old granny moved her hand and took out a token. She waved it in the air, and a vortex-like portal to the void secret realm appeared in front of Xiao Pingon. Then, the old granny flew into the vortex with Xiao Pingon. With a flash of light, Xiao Pingon found himself in a place filled with green bamboos. In the distance, there were green mountains and clear waters. Colorful butterflies fluttered around him. There was a gorgeous palace with golden glazed tiles in the middle of this bamboo forest. The words Sky Motion Sect were written on the main entrance of the palace. There were many summoners flying around the mountain peak in the distance. There was also a waterfall under which some people were cultivating and freezing the flowing waterfall. Xiao Pingon was dumbfounded. What was this place? The old granny looked at Xiao Pingon and grinned. Kid, your cultivation is not bad. You've already reached the ethereal opening realm at such a young age. This is just a secret realm palace for our Sky Motion sect to patrol. Why? Have you never seen it before? Sky Motion sect? Xiao Pingon was stunned. Isn't this the 10,000 deities sect? Of course this is not the 10,000 deities sect, the old granny said as she walked toward the main entrance of the palace. Our Sky Motion sect has a good relationship with the 10,000 deities sect, so we asked the 10,000 deities sect to help us find a suitable person. Don't worry. As long as you provide soul power, I will give you the antidote and let you leave. Everything will be according to your agreement with the 10,000 deities sect. Chapter 600. Before the old granny reached the entrance of the palace, a group of maidservants dressed in long dresses came out to greet her. They bowed respectfully to her. These maidservants were a feast for the eyes. Their skin was rosy and their eyes were bright. They smiled sweetly and looked no different from real people. However, they were all summoned characters. They had the unique aura of the summoned characters. This aura was very obvious in the eyes of high-level summoners. Bring him to bathe and change his clothes. Then, bring him to Longevity Hall. The old granny casually instructed the maidservants. After saying that, the old granny seemed to recall something. She looked at Xia Pinggan and asked, "By the way, what's your name?" "Mei Zheng," Xia Pinggan said. The old granny nodded and said, "Go on. Mr. Mei, please." One of the summoned maidservants smiled and gestured. Then, she led Xia Pinggan to the side of the grand hall. Xia Pinggan did not say anything. He obediently followed the maidservant to bathe and change his clothes. At this moment, Xia Pinggan heaved a sigh of relief. If everything in front of him was a trap, then the moment he entered the so-called palace of the mystic realm was the best opportunity for these people to restrain him. Xia Pinggan had already prepared a large number of lightning talismans and defensive disc arrays in his space warehouse. He was prepared to blast them away if anything went wrong. Furthermore, there were no weapons in the palace of the mystic realm that were targeted at him. It looked like the other party only wanted to extract his soul power. That made things easier. The old granny had mentioned that this was the palace of the Heaven Motion sects patrolling mystic realm. This palace of the Heaven Motion sect indeed looked very wealthy. This meant that the void mystic realm in front of him could be moved. Otherwise, the palace of the Heaven Motion sects patrolling mystic realm would not be built on Myriad God Planet. If they were wealthy, they should have quite a number of realm beads. That would make things easier. Xia Pinggan smiled in his heart. The summoned maidservants brought Xia Pinggan to a courtyard. There was a fake hot spring in the courtyard that was steaming hot. It was very enjoyable. Then, a group of maidservants dressed Xia Pinggan in the hot spring. Some of them sprinkled flower petals in the hot spring. Some prepared new clothes for Xia Pinggan. There were also some who entered the water in gauze to scoop water for Xia Pinggan to wash his hair. Xia Pinggan had an attitude of taking things as they came and allowed the maids to do whatever they wanted. He knew that the so-called bathing and changing clothes might seem like something the people of the Heavenly Motion sect were particular about on the surface, but in fact, it was just another way for the people of the Heavenly Motion sect to confirm if there was anything wrong with him. There were a few special medicinal herbs in the bathing water, and someone had also cast a spell on it. If he had snuck in with a disguised face and identity, or if he had some kind of disease or demonic spirit in his body, it would be revealed when he bathed. Outside the courtyard where he bathed, Xia Pinggan could feel two powerful auras lurking. If anything were to happen to him, the people outside would take action. Only when Xia Pinggan was almost done with his bath and there was nothing wrong with his body did the two powerful auras outside the courtyard quietly retreat. This was also because Xia Pinggan's soul power was extremely strong, which made him extremely sensitive to all kinds of auras. That was how he discovered that there were experts lurking outside the courtyard. If it were a summoner, he would probably not know anything. Thinking about how the Heaven Motion sect had entrusted the 10,000 deities sect to find people who could provide soul power, Xia Pinggan felt that the Heaven Motion sect seemed to be very cautious. He did not know what they were worried about. Were they afraid that someone would sneak in? Also, this secret realm palace was actually on the 10,000 deities planet. This arrangement seemed a little strange. However, this was not important. What was important was that he would soon be able to knock on the bamboo pole of the Heaven Motion sect. After a while, the bath was over. The maidservants helped Xia Pinggan change into a soft and light black wizard robe of good quality. He put on a crown and a pair of cloud boots, making Xia Pinggan look completely new and full of energy. Then, they led Xia Pinggan out of the courtyard and brought Xia Pinggan to the Longevity Hall. The old lady from earlier was in the Longevity Hall. Other than that old lady, there was also a stocky old man with gray hair and a mouth full of buck teeth. The two of them were drinking tea and seemed to be waiting for Xia Pinggan's arrival. The buck-toothed old man's lips were protruding outwards, and his small eyes were exceptionally lively. His snow-white eyebrows were slightly slanted, and the ends of his eyebrows drooped slightly. He looked very comedic, but his expression was exceptionally serious. Elder Mian, this is Mei Zheng. The old lady introduced Xia Pingan to the old man. Elder Mian, please take a look at him and see if he's suitable. The old man called Elder Mian looked at Xia Pingan and nodded slightly. He said in a slightly ambiguous tone, Nether Passage Realm. His realm is enough, but it depends on whether his soul power can withstand it. Some summoners have refined soul tools and lost too much of their soul power, or they have cultivated some secret techniques or eaten some special things, resulting in their soul power being impure. They are not good candidates. As the old man spoke, he moved his hand and took out a pagoda-like object that was over 2 feet long. He placed it on the table in front of him and said to Xia Pingan, come here and hold the bottom of this soul power probe. Let me see how deep your soul power is. The pagoda-shaped soul power probe was exquisitely designed. There were numeric scales on the outside of the pagoda, and there was a crystal tube inside. There were mysterious patterns engraved on the outside of the crystal tube, and there was a drop of blood flowing inside the tube. Xia Pingan knew what was going on with a single glance. A soul master who had grasped the secret technique of dividing his soul power had poured a drop of his soul power into the crystal tube and then used the secret technique of dividing his soul power to apply on the pagoda. Then, the pagoda became a soul power probe that could sense the amount of soul power of another person. This thing was like a thermometer that could detect soul power. There was no specific unit of measurement for soul power, so Xia Pingan saw the numeric scales on the soul power probe ranging from 0 to 100. This was just the old man's own perception. This old man looked like he had some tricks up his sleeve and was stronger than the average soul master. But compared to him, Xia Pingan walked over obediently and held the bottom of the pagoda-like soul power probe in his hand. Pour a bit of God power into it, the old man said from the side. Xia Pingan poured a bit of God power into the soul power probe, and then the drop of blood in the crystal tube inside the soul power probe began to emit a faint red light. The drop of blood floated up from the bottom of the crystal tube all the way until it reached about 53 on the scale of the probe, and then it stopped moving. The old man's mouth was wide open as he looked at Xia Pingan in astonishment. At this moment, Xia Pingan only had about 38 slashes of soul power left in his body. He used a secret technique to condense the remaining soul power to form a soul power doppelganger that could not move. It sat cross-legged quietly in the spirit realm god palace in the secret mandala. Therefore, no matter how others probed, Xia Pingan's soul power was only about 38 slashes. Elder Mian, what do you think of this person? Grandma asked when she saw the shocked expression on the old man's face, and then looked at the scale of the soul power probe. She wasn't sure if it was suitable or not, so she couldn't help but ask. Elder Mian's expression immediately changed from shock to excitement and joy. He stood up immediately. Suitable? It's simply too suitable. This person's soul power is about 3 times that of a normal 7-sun realm summoner, and his soul power is abnormally pure. He's the best person to extract soul power from. After his soul power is extracted, as long as he takes good care of it, he can recover it in the future. After a few years, he can extract soul power a second time. The old woman was also stunned when she heard Elder Mian's words. She looked at Xia Pingan with a flicker in her eyes, and it was a little different now. How can he have such dense and pure soul power? It's simply 1 in a million. This won't do. I have to confirm it again. Elder Mian said excitedly, as if he was excited by the prospect. He couldn't help but reach out a hand and press it on Xia Pingan's wrist, using the secret technique to split his soul to probe inside Xia Pingan's body. A few seconds later, Elder Mian withdrew his hand with a satisfied expression and looked at the old woman. The soul power probe is correct. This person's soul power is about 3 times that of a normal person and abnormally pure. This matter is settled. Elder Mian then looked at Xia Pingan. Why is the soul power in your body so dense and abnormally pure? Did you eat something special? Xia Pingan acted as if he didn't understand and licked his lips. I don't know either. All right, I was looking for herbs in a void secret realm before and saw a transparent child riding a golden deer that was 1 foot long. The deer and the child were very lifelike and emitted a fragrance. They could pass through mountains and trees and seemed to have supernatural powers. I couldn't help but try to catch them, but they escaped through the rocks. In the end, they only left behind a piece of antler, and I ate that antler. Ah, no wonder, that's a lingji mushroom that is cultivated for more than 10,000 years. Elder Mian's expression was one of relief, but then he felt a bit of pain. The flesh on his face trembled and his brows furrowed. A lingji mushroom that is cultivated for more than 10,000 years. Elder Mian's expression was one of relief, but then he felt a bit of pain. His face was trembling and his brows were furrowed. A lingji mushroom that is cultivated for more than 10,000 years and has a human form and amount. That's a true treasure of heaven and earth. It gathers the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and has the effect of nourishing the soul. How could you eat the antler of the lingji mushroom like that? This old man is quite cute. I didn't know how to do it at the time, but the antler changed color in the blink of an eye after I cut it off. It was still shrinking and the fragrance also faded, so I just ate it. Elder Mian, if this person is suitable, can we start now? The old woman on the side said straightforwardly. Of course, we can start now. Elder Mian nodded affirmatively. All right, I'll ask the saintess to come over and invite Elder Mian and Mr. May to follow me to the cultivation room. The old woman had already stood up. Unknowingly, the old woman had started to address Xia Pingan as Mr. May. Chapter 601. The cultivation room was an underground cultivation room. Although it was called a secret room, it was decorated in a grand and luxurious way. Aside from a protection of the 5 elements array, there were also a few disciples of the Sky Motion sect guarding it. Xia Pingan, Elder Mian, and the old woman arrived. After waiting for a while, Xia Pingan heard a cold female voice from outside the door. The saintess has arrived. Following this voice, Elder Mian and the old woman stood up respectfully. Xia Pingan also stood up. 2 women with long skirts trailing on the ground and tall hair buns entered the secret room first and stood on the left and right. Then, a woman with peerless beauty, like the bright moon descending to the mortal world, with a head of black hair like silk, wearing a snow-white long skirt, walked into the cultivation room. The moment this woman entered the secret room, the room became brighter and brighter, and everything became brighter. Greetings, saintess! The old woman and Elder Mian respectfully bowed when they saw the woman. Xia Pingan was dumbfounded. Only when the old woman looked at him with a warning gaze did Xia Pingan react. He followed the old woman and Elder Mian and bowed to the woman. With a rough voice, he said, "Greetings, saintess." It wasn't that Xia Pingan hadn't seen a peerless beauty before. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have lost his composure like this. The reason he lost his composure was because he realized that the saintess of the Sky Motion sect was actually Ming Ruolin. Xia Pingan was so shocked that he lost his composure for a moment. However, the old granny and Elder Mian didn't find his loss of composure strange. After all, there were too many people who lost their composure in front of the holy maiden of the Sky Motion sect, especially men. Damn, how could it be Ming Ruolin? This was Ming Ruolin's temperament. No matter where she went, she would have a gorgeous effect and aura. Cao Cao's appearance could also be considered peerless, but compared to Ming Ruolin, Cao Cao was slightly inferior. Cao Cao had the loveliness of a young girl, but lacked the otherworldly aura of a woman. If Cao Cao's temperament was that of a princess, then Ming Ruolin's temperament was that of an empress. Moreover, she was the master of an immortal palace. Xia Pingan felt his head buzzing. Ever since he came to the Yuanxio world, he had been separated from the rest of the people involved in the heaven-mending plan. He had only seen Yin Duo. He didn't expect to see Ming Ruolin here. How could Ming Ruolin become the saintess of the Sky Motion sect? Ming Ruolin's cultivation was at the Seven Sun realm? It seemed that Ming Ruolin had a great opportunity after coming to the Yuanxio world. Damn! Granny and Elder Mian, please dispense with the formalities. Thank you for your hard work, Ming Ruolin said softly. Then, she lifted her jade-like wrist under her snow-white sleeves and elegantly gestured for them to dispense with the formalities. Her every move was breathtaking. Then, her slender neck turned slightly, and her bright eyes finally landed on Xia Pingan. You must be Mr. Mei, right? Hearing Ming Ruolin's voice, Xia Pingan was even more certain that this was Ming Ruolin. It couldn't be anyone else. Xia Pingan nodded and immediately put on a cautious expression. I am Mei Zheng. Xia Pingan recognized Ming Ruolin, but Ming Ruolin didn't recognize Xia Pingan. I'll have to trouble Mr. Mei this time. No matter what Mr. Mei sees here, please keep quiet after leaving this place. Otherwise, Mr. Mei will get himself into big trouble. Ming Ruolin continued to speak to Xia Pingan. Don't worry, Saintess. I'm only here to complete the deal with the Wanshan sect. I don't care about anything else. Xia Pingan replied. That would be best. Ming Ruolin nodded and waved her hand gently. The two women with tall buns who had followed her here bowed and walked out of the secret room, closing the door behind them. His followers were all at the Six Sun realm? Xia Pingan smiled bitterly in his heart. He originally thought that he was the most powerful person in the heaven-mending plan, but it seemed that Ming Ruolin wasn't bad either. He had a heaven-defying cheat, but he had only reached his current level after many obstacles and was hunted down by countless people. Ming Ruolin, on the other hand, had somehow become the saintess of the Sky Motion sect. Her luck was simply invincible. Elder Mian, the saintess is here. Everything is ready. Let's begin, Granny said. All right, let's begin. Elder Mian had a solemn expression on his face. He sat down first, then pointed to the two warm jade futons on the stone couch. Saintess and Mr. Mei, please sit on my left and right. Xia Pingan sat on Elder Mian's left, while Ming Ruolin rose like a white lotus and gently landed on Elder Mian's right. Granny didn't sit. Instead, she stood behind Xia Pingan like a protector and also a surveillance. If Xia Pingan did anything wrong, he would probably be dealt with immediately. Saintess, please take out your sacred weapon. Mr. Mei, please maintain your spirit and qi. Don't be affected by the flute, Elder Mian said to Ming Ruolin. Xia Pingan was also curious. He didn't know what kind of sacred weapon it was to be so powerful. Ming Ruolin nodded. With a wave of her hand, a verdant flute appeared in her hand. That flute seemed to have a special magical power. Just as Ming Ruolin took it out, Xia Pingan seemed to hear countless heavenly music in his ears. Everything in the room seemed to be twisting. Mist appeared in the room, and immortal palaces were faintly discernible. It was as if fairies were flying around in the clouds. Xia Pingan could even hear the soft laughter of those fairies. In addition, the divine power in Xia Pingan's secret mandala was also vibrating. The divine power in the divine pool formed by the insect crystal showed signs of overflowing. Xia Pingan was shocked. He hurriedly maintained his spirit and qi. Only then did the illusions in his eyes and ears gradually disappear. The changes in the secret mandala also gradually calmed down. This was a sacred weapon? It was actually affected on the side. He didn't know what it would be like when it attacked. Xia Pingan's heart trembled. The Sky Motion sect had indeed looked for him to use his soul force to nurture a sacred weapon. Although the Sky Motion sect had many disciples, this kind of task was equivalent to crippling someone. The Sky Motion sect couldn't bear to do it themselves, so they could only find someone outside who didn't care about their life. Mr. Mei, I will extract the soul force from your body. The amount of soul force extracted is less than a third of the soul force in your body. This process will take several hours. Mr. Mei, please don't move. Just quietly cooperate. Elder Mian said to Xia Pingon. Okay, Elder Mian, don't worry. I won't move. Xia Pingon said. Elder Mian nodded. His hand moved and took out a silver needle. He used the needle to lightly touch Xia Pingon's forehead. A drop of blood condensed from Xia Pingon's forehead. Elder Mian's hands formed complicated hand seals and seals. His entire body flashed with a layer of golden light. A large golden umbrella appeared behind him and floated above his head. The large golden umbrella opened up and sprinkled a dense brilliance that enveloped everyone in the room. That large umbrella was a soul tool that Elder Mian had refined for himself. This soul tool wasn't used to attack. Instead, it was used to protect and calm the soul when he used the technique to split the soul. Xia Pingon closed his eyes and allowed Elder Mian to do as he wished. He said to Ming Rulin in his heart, Sorry, even though we're familiar with each other, I can't miss this opportunity to strike a bamboo pole. Under Elder Mian's guidance, a strand of golden brilliance as thin as a hair was drawn out from between Xia Pingon's eyebrows by the silver needle in Elder Mian's hand. That strand of golden brilliance spiraled in the air like a wisp of smoke and fell towards the Saint Artifact flute in Ming Rulin's hand. Other than Xia Pingon, who had his eyes closed, the other three people in the room all opened their eyes wide at this moment. They all stared solemnly and nervously at the flute in Ming Rulin's hand. Just as the strand of golden brilliance between Xia Pingon's eyebrows was about to approach the flute, that strand of golden brilliance suddenly trembled. The tip of the strand of golden brilliance started to turn red and wriggle like a spirit snake, as if it didn't want to touch the Saint Artifact flute. Seeing this, Elder Mian's expression changed slightly. The silver needle in his hand quickly pierced into the strand of golden brilliance, while his other hand quickly formed a few hand seals. He wanted to press the strand of golden brilliance onto the Saint Artifact flute, but the strand of golden brilliance started to tremble even more violently. The dark red color started to spread from the tip of the strand of golden brilliance, and in the blink of an eye, it had already spread halfway. Elder Mian tried twice before finally sighing. He put away the silver needle and formed a hand seal. That strand of golden brilliance instantly disappeared back into Xia Pingon's forehead. Xia Pingon opened his dazed eyes and looked at Elder Mian. Elder Mian, it's over already? The old lady and Ming Rulin both looked at Elder Mian in confusion. They both saw that the process didn't go smoothly. Elder Mian pondered for a moment and gave the old lady standing behind Xia Pingon a look. He then said to Xia Pingon with a pleasant expression, Something unexpected happened on my side this time. I'd like to ask Mr. May to stay in the Sky Motion Sect's Secret Realm Palace for a few more days. After a few days, when I'm ready, I'll come back to extract your soul. Xia Pingon immediately smiled and stood up from the warm jade cushion. All right, no problem. I'll do as you wish. The old lady was also a shrewd person. She could tell from Elder Mian's eyes that something unexpected had happened. She immediately sent Xia Pingon out of the cultivation room and ordered the people outside to bring Xia Pingon to a place called Qingxin Garden to rest. After Xia Pingon left, the old lady returned to the room and asked with a frown, Elder Mian, what happened? Why didn't you extract his soul? Ming Rulin had already put away the Saint Artifact flute and didn't ask. Mr. May's soul power isn't cooperating. Elder Mian shook his head. Oh, what do you mean? Didn't Mr. May just sit here and let Elder Mian do whatever you want? The old lady asked. Elder Mian nodded, then shook his head. Mr. May is cooperating, but his soul power isn't. Chapter 602. Mr. May's soul power isn't cooperating? The old woman frowned as a trace of anger flashed through her eyes. Could it be that he's playing tricks on purpose? Elder Mian shook his head with a serious expression. It's not that he's playing tricks. Mr. May's cooperation is a decision made by his mind. However, his soul power isn't cooperating. It's a spontaneous reaction of his emotions. Ming Rulin had been listening quietly the entire time. She finally spoke up at this time. Elder Mian, you mean that he's cooperating with us is a last resort, but he's not happy or satisfied. That's why his soul power is resisting? You're right, Saintess. Elder Mian nodded. A person's mind is controlling their actions, but their emotions can affect the state of their soul power. Under these circumstances, if we were to rashly fuse his soul power with the Saint artifact, not only would it not nourish the Saint artifact, it might even damage it. That's right. The nourishment of the Saint artifact is indeed a huge matter. We can't be careless. The old woman nodded. Elder Mian continued to explain, if it's a normal person, even if their emotions aren't willing, the difference in their soul power wouldn't be so big. However, Mr. May is a little special. I didn't think that his emotions would have such a huge effect on his soul power. He said that most of his soul power came from the 10,000-year meat mushroom, and it seems that it's true. The 10,000-year meat mushroom is a spiritual item of heaven and earth. It can't be restrained at all. The soul power he obtained from eating the meat mushroom will be greatly affected by his emotions. Naturally, he won't be willing to be extracted and used for others. Our Sky Motion sect has been sending people to search for the 10,000-year meat mushroom, but we haven't been able to find it. That thing can only be found by chance. I didn't think that we would meet someone who ate part of the antlers of the 10,000-year meat mushroom. This is also the will of the heavens. The old woman was also dumbfounded after hearing Elder Mian's words. Ming Rulin frowned slightly, as if she also felt that this matter was a little tricky. Elder Mian, what should we do now? The old woman asked. Actually, this isn't a difficult problem. The problem of his emotions still needs to be solved by his emotions. As long as we can solve the knot in his emotions and make him willing to let his soul power be extracted to nourish the Saint artifact, it'll be fine. Elder Mian explained. Mr. May's soul power is abnormally dense. The soul power we extracted this time isn't even a third of his soul power. This is because the soul power he lost, this is only a small portion of his soul power. This also means that after he's soul power this time, he'll be able to replenish half of his lost soul power. After 7 years, when the Saint artifact's soul power will T. This person's worth it, of course, of it within it. TSS. Of us. The old lady and Ming Rulin finally understood. The old lady suddenly laughed and exhaled. Her eyebrows relaxed. After all that talk, we just want to make him happy. This is simple. This person sold himself to the myriad deities sect for the 7-sun realm divine spring and is willing to risk his life on the myriad deities planet as a sacrificial warrior. I'm sure he cares about his cultivation the most. We just need to cater to his liking and let him stay in the palace in the mystic realm for a period of time. We'll naturally find a way to make him willing. As the old lady spoke, she didn't know that Child of Fortune was sitting on her shoulder. He was laughing mischievously and making funny faces at her. Mr. May, this is pure fragrance garden. If Mr. May needs anything, you can tell us. We'll serve Mr. May in pure fragrance garden. There are many forbidden areas in the palace in the mystic realm. If there's no need, Mr. May, please don't leave pure fragrance garden. Xia Pingan was escorted to pure fragrance garden by 2 maidservants from the Sky Motion sect. Xia Pingan nodded. All right, I understand. You can leave now. I'll rest for a while. I'll call you if I need anything. The 2 maidservants bowed to Xia Pingan and left. Pure Fragrance Garden was just outside the palace in the mystic realm. The entire garden was about 10 acres in size. It was quite luxurious. There were pavilions, terraces, and pavilions in the garden. There were flowers, birds, and fish ponds. All the appliances were exquisite and impeccable. Child of Fortune had already transmitted the scene in the secret room to Xia Pingan. Although Xia Pingan didn't show it on his face, he was overjoyed. He felt refreshed. The Sky Motion sect had taken the bait. It was natural for him to extort them. As long as he didn't go too far, it would be easy to get a few rel pearls from them. Ming Rulin also left the secret room. Xia Pingan asked Child of Fortune to follow Ming Rulin. He wanted to know how she was doing. However, Not long after Child of Fortune followed Ming Rulin out of the secret room. Ming Rulin passed through a palace gate and entered the central area of the palace. An invisible energy hung down from the gate like a bead curtain. It seemed to be a special boundary. Child of Fortune couldn't help but stop. The message from the Child of Fortune was that if he followed Ming Rulin through that ending, he would be discovered. Xiao Pingon didn't let the Child of Fortune follow Ming Rulin anymore. Instead, he let the Child of Fortune wander around the Sky Motion Sect Palace in the Mystic Realm to understand the situation there. The Mystic Realm of the Sky Motion Sect covered an area of more than 10,000 square kilometers. The space inside the palace was self-contained. There were beautiful mountains and rivers everywhere. The scenery was pleasant. The Sky Motion Sect also raised many rare birds and auspicious beasts, making the place look like a fairyland. There were about 100 disciples of the Sky Motion Sect gathered here. There were both men and women. The lowest cultivation among these disciples was at the 6th Sun Realm. The highest cultivation among them was the 8th Sun Realm. Xiao Pingon could see that the old woman was at the 8th Sun Realm. In addition to the core of the palace, which was protected by a barrier, in some of the mountains and valleys of the palace, there were also several caves and pavilions that were protected by barriers. It looked a bit like a place where experts were in seclusion. Xiao Pingon didn't let Child of Fortune God explore inside. From the conversations of the Sky Motion Sect disciples, Xiao Pingon learned some information. The mystic realm of the Sky Motion Sect could indeed move. Previously, the mystic realm of the Sky Motion Sect was still near the immeasurable mountain in the god-slaying insect world. A group of Sky Motion Sect disciples were also training near the immeasurable mountain. It wasn't until a month ago that the mystic realm of the Sky Motion Sect moved to the spatial crack of the myriad god planet. There were two reasons why the Celestial Motion Sect moved their mystic realm palace to myriad god planet. The first reason was that the Celestial Motion Sect had a good relationship with the myriad god sect. By sending their disciples to myriad god planet for training, the Celestial Motion Sect was also supporting the myriad god sect in protecting their mother planet. The second reason was more utilitarian. The Celestial Motion Sect was also very interested in the divine treasury left behind by the fallen god spirit. Now, the myriad god sect even had an 8th Sun Realm guardian leading many disciples to search for it. Xiao Pingon was very interested in why Ming Rulin had become the saintess of the Sky Motion Sect. However, the people of the Sky Motion Sect were very respectful and cautious towards the saintess of the sect. Not many people talked about it in private. However, there was still a piece of information that caught Xiao Pingon's attention. From the conversations of a few Sky Motion Sect disciples, Xiao Pingon learned that the Sky Motion Sect had discovered a secret cave in the immeasurable mountain half a year ago. Subsequently, the Sky Motion Sect had clashed with another god-descendant family. Therefore, the Sky Motion Sect's mystic realm of the Sky Motion Sect had moved to the myriad god planet. It seemed like they had the intention of temporarily avoiding this conflict. In the Yuanxiu world, the god-descendant family was also a terrifying and powerful faction. The god-descendant family in the Yuanxiu world was different from the sections. The so-called god-descendant family was a family that had produced a demigod or god spirit in the boundless river of history. Furthermore, the descendants of these demigods or god spirit have been passed down to this day. This kind of history would also allow these god-descendant family to have an incomparable foundation and power. Some small and medium-sized sects and countries would even rely on these god-descendant family to exist. Based on the time, could the sage-level flute he had seen earlier have been obtained by the Sky Motion Sect from a secret cave in the immeasurable mountain? Xiao Pingon could not help but secretly guess. This guess could not be confirmed yet. However, just as the Child of Fortune was having fun in the Sky Motion Sect's mystic realm of the Sky Motion Sect, in Xiao Pingon's secret mandala, a huge pillar of light in the Sacred Master Hall that had been silent for a long time began to soar into the sky. Countless people in Firmament City began to gather in the Sacred Master Hall, waiting for the Sacred Master to teach them. The second opportunity to fuse with the Sacred Master Realm Pearl had suddenly arrived. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.